Oh, excuse me.
Through you, Mayor Kane, we are now live on YouTube, and you may begin when ready.
Thank you very much. My apologies to everyone for the delays. So we'll call the meeting to order. I've got 107. Sorry about that again. Now, additions to the agenda. We have amendments to the agenda. Should we do that right here?
Please.
Yeah, we're changing the order, I believe, right?
That's correct. If we could request through you, Mayor Kane, to change the order, having the discussion under 14.1, the parking strategy or the park strategy, before the actual discussion under 13.3, the parking enforcement issue.
Yep. So we'll just want to reverse those, or do you want to do 14.1 first and then 13?
In that order, correct,
Yeah.
in that order, yes.
Okay. So if everyone else is okay with that, that is an amendment.
Mayor Kane, it's
Yeah.
Kate. Can you call a motion on that, changing the order on the agenda, please?
Call a motion to, yeah, we need someone to move that we
Yes.
confirm
I'll
the
move,
agenda.
Bill.
Yeah, thanks. I got Larry and Scott all in favor. That's carried.
Thank you.
So we have, that was a motion to confirm the agenda as amended. So I would ask next for any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. I have 3 counselors on my screen, but not Pat. So I get 3 head shakes, and then I need to hear from you, Pat.
Yeah, I'm fine. Let me
Okay,
know.
Thank you. So if there's no declarations, then we'll note that and move forward, please, with our agenda. Thanks, Emily. So public question period. Does anyone know if we've had any written questions submitted? Just do the clerk.
I have received no questions to the clerk, Mayor Kane.
Okay, thank you very much. We can move on then to section 6. Thank you. That would be our presentations and delegations, and it's my sincere pleasure to welcome MPP Dave Piccini, who's here with us today, representing the Peterborough South. I can tell you from personal experience, a very hardworking person for us here in Northumberland. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thanks, Mayor Kane, for having me, council, staff, for all the work you're doing during these difficult times. I'll lead off first just with a brief comment, obviously, about COVID-19 and the variants of concern. We've seen an increase in cases in our community, obviously, a dramatic increase in hospitalizations and ICU admissions across the province of Ontario. We're seeing similar challenges in a number of our neighboring jurisdictions throughout Canada, BC, Quebec, just to name a few, dealing with a very real and difficult third wave. You know, it's affecting all of us, and if you look to some of the very, very real tragedies happening right now in India, we can see with the new COVID variant, that's a mutant stream that is very concerning. We all have to remain vigilant and continue to follow public health guidelines and continue our vaccine rollout. One of the best defenses, obviously, against the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know, obviously, there's been some challenges in supply locally, but the good news is that thanks to a remarkable volunteer effort of a number of residents of Hamilton Township, we've seen Cobourg Rotary really stand tall, not just on the local stage, on the provincial and national stage, helping in Minden, Fenelon Falls. And that's really the spirit we've seen across the province of Ontario in combating this pandemic. And thanks to their efforts, we've seen a number of mass sites set up using the similar, very efficient method. If any of you have had the chance or spoken to anyone who's been through the Cobourg Mass Vaccination Center, you'll see how efficient and truly remarkable it is. And to see that now rolled out in Fenelon Falls, Minden, Haliburton, to hear Windsor reach out, to hear and get calls from Rotarians in British Columbia and across Canada really is a testament to our community and a number of residents and volunteers who stood up and stood tall in Hamilton Township. Obviously, as well, where we really, I mean, one of the big issues now we're really hoping is that the federal government will address the border closures with countries where the variants are coming in. It is very concerning, and every day thousands arrive at Pearson with outbreaks on planes that bring in variants of concern. So as we move forward, the budget, which I'm really excited to speak to all of you about today, really speaks to protecting the health of Ontarians and the economy. We know we can't have a healthy economy without healthy people. That's a theme you've seen echoed throughout the recent federal budget as well, and I'll highlight some of the synergies there because I really think it's important to highlight where all governments are working together in support of the people we represent. And we were certainly pleased to see a number of critical investments that align with measures that the provincial government put out in our budget. So first, I'll start with the job training tax credit. This is a really critical piece to the budget for skills training, and in the budget, I know so many careers have been affected through the pandemic, and the investment that we're making through the job training tax credit is going to be critical for rebounding, for a stronger economy. And this proposal is up to 50% of eligible expenses. That is up to $2,000. And that is eligible for any educational institute across Canada for courses taken in 2021. So for example, why that matters for local folks is occupational skills courses, occupational trade or professional exams, post-secondary education courses. All of these are eligible. You saw a lot of those themes as well in the federal budget on training, on unlocking the human resource potential of our province and of our nation in developing a highly skilled, highly trained, well-trained workforce. So this is going to be really key, be it municipal staff upgrading their skill sets and credentials, be it someone who's decided mid-career to go back to school. It's really continuing that theme of learning as you earn, which builds on previous investments the government's made in micro-credentialing strategy. It's a leader in Canada, first of its kind, really acknowledging that you can ladder those experiences without having to start from scratch with a new degree, and that we should give you equivalency. So the government's made significant investments, including, as I mentioned, on that micro-credentialing strategy of $59 million. Building on that as well, obviously a well-trained health workforce is key, and we've made commitments for free PSW training as a part of our commitment to hiring 27,000 new healthcare professionals. And that's I just received a call actually from a constituent mid-career, and she expressed to me her excitement over responding. And really, we're seeing that directly as a result of all of the right lauding that we've given to our healthcare heroes on the front line doing remarkable work. And we're seeing many people interested in the health profession. And this is a good thing because we do need to train, as I said, 27,000 healthcare professionals to meet our current and growing demands of our healthcare system. In addition, I wanted to highlight the Rural Regional Opportunities Investment Tax Credit. I think that's really key for our community. That's between $50,000 and $500,000 a year for investments this year. We've doubled that, so it's a 20% tax credit. And that's why that matters is as we look to see companies investing in our communities, I think to the recent Mirmo announcement at the DART plant up in Trent Hills. And if we look at industrial lands and businesses looking to relocate, with people working remote now, I know a number are considering, can we not move outside the city center? And so this Regional Opportunities Investment Tax Credit, the boundaries start in Northumberland Northumberland. So this is not for any investment in the GTHA. It's strictly targeted towards rural Ontario. And as I said, that's between $500,000 and as low as $50,000 investment. And that tax credit is eligible in Northumberland. The CARE tax credit, we know that childcare is an important reality and an important investment for so many. You heard in the federal budget a real childcare as an economic tool, not just an important social service. And we certainly understand that, and that's why in the budget the province increased the support provided to the Childcare Access and Relief from Expenses tax credit. That's up to 20% of credit in entitlements, and this would increase the 2021 supports for over 300,000 recipients from about $1,250 to $1,500 on average. And that's this tax credit provides family with flexible childcare supports of up to 75% of their eligible childcare expenses. And this top up would be 20% of the calculated CARE tax credit entitlement for 2021. So why this matters is, I mean, we need flexibility and choice. We have a lot of shift workers. We have a lot of people who work unconventional hours, and it's important that as a government, we're supporting them in childcare choice that meets their demands. And you've seen additional commitments made with the federal budget as well to support childcare, and that's going to be critical in the years going forward. The tourism, hospitality, and small business support grant, I know really important for Hamilton. And that will provide an estimated $100 million in payments of between $10,000 to $20,000. So the Ontario Small Business Support Grant, of which there are a number of businesses in Hamilton Township that applied, that's been doubled in the budget. So whatever recipients receive first round, they'll automatically receive no application, no dealing on the phone, no dealing, haranguing any civil servants to get this done. This will just be doubled in the budget. Now, understanding that there are some challenges, and this is why politics, I've always said, is a two-way street. Leaning on your feedback, leaning on the feedback of residents of Hamilton Township, we've announced another dedicated small business support grant for tourism and hospitality. Why this matters, and I know this is close to all of your hearts, but hotels, motels, RV, campgrounds, hunting and fishing camps, children's overnight camps. This is sort of how we're going to expand that program targeted for the tourism and hospitality sector, and that's really key. The community building fund as well, and this is where I'm going to ask for all of your support. This is a $105 million new envelope in the budget, $55 million for operating, $50 million for capital. The first stream will be opening soon, the $55 million for operating. This is non-for-profits. These are our sports leagues. These are our small and non-for-profits that are eligible for this. A lot of great work's gone into this, and I'd be remiss, if I didn't give Paige a shout out, who's on the line, who works in my office. This is that feedback that we have with our constituents. We'd heard, from folks at Bewdley Legion. We'd heard from Colborne. This was really the genesis of this, that, look, Dave, Paige, to deal with the expanse here, to deal with applying for this, we need an audited statement. So working with Trillium and working with the ministry, we made sure that small rural non-for-profits didn't face the burden of a third-party audited review, and that what they submitted to CRA would suffice. And that's really going to unlock the potential for our smallest non-for-profits. And I'm going to ask all of you, please, 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 identify a few of them in Hamilton Township. Let me know, and let's work together. We can get ministry officials to walk them through. I know not everybody's got a city slicker grant writer, and often the daunting task of writing the grant is a hill too steep for many. So let's work together. Let's identify. Let's really hold the hand of these organizations and make sure we get our applications in for that community building fund. In addition, obviously, a big one is for our health and protecting people's health. I feel really strongly about this. I mean, you'll note, some areas where I really laud the coordinated and support we've had at both levels of government. Obviously, we were disappointed as a province, and I know most premiers or all premiers across Canada join in not seeing an increase to the healthcare transfer. The government of Ontario has made significant investments into healthcare. There was significant challenges dealing with decades of historic underfunding, and that meant hospitals like Northumberland Hills Hospital, Campbellford, which was on the brink, and Northumberland Hills Hospital, where you saw the merging of inpatient units just to deal with the challenges. I was talking to nurses that were walking around the hospital for hours after a shift just to decompress, knowing that they didn't provide that level of care that they wanted to their patients. Understanding this, the province has made historic investments in healthcare. First and foremost, fixing the medium and small size funding formula, which meant a $5 million increase in base funding for local hospitals like NHH. That gives them the flexibility. They've now separated those inpatient units. We're seeing hiring of additional staff. Obviously, the province's commitment to hiring 27,000 healthcare professionals is key. And that is in tandem with long-term care. We saw the groundbreaking for Golden Plow, which is key. We've seen investments in hospice in our community, of course, with Ed's House. We've seen it in Clarington now. Brand new long-term care builds all over our riding, and this really was a challenge. I mean, inheriting from the previous government dilapidated infrastructure and a really abysmal record of 411 net new beds built in long-term care. By contrast, right now in our region alone, we have more long-term care beds coming online, new beds, than in the last decade in totality for net new. So that really speaks to the need for new long-term care beds in our community, because you need modern and safe rooms. And we know one of the reasons COVID spread in long-term care was because of the ward style rooms, or 4 to a room. So these investments are key, and be it Golden Plow, be it Streamway, be it Southbridge, be it Omni, we're seeing these investments, Pleasant Meadow Manor, throughout Northumberland, Peterborough South. And that's going to be key for supporting folks in aging, giving them the care they deserve with the 4 hour of direct care commitment that will make us a leader. So we can expect a lot of our residents to enter the healthcare professions thanks to these investments. We've seen a lot of local contractors, skilled trades benefiting from these projects, the number of infrastructure projects in our community. And I'm looking forward going forward for more locally there. We've in addition, I wanted to just highlight a few local investments. Obviously, the fire grant. We know that our first responders have done a remarkable job in the face of this pandemic, and wanted to especially highlight the $7,200 that Hamilton Township Fire and Emergency Services is receiving, and obviously thank the work and leadership, in particularly from Hamilton Township. I know our fire chiefs are looking at ways that we can work together, ways that we can better deliver services, and there's been a lot of leadership from the chief and from the team at Hamilton Fire Department. And I'd like to give them credit where credit's due for that leadership. And for you as a municipality staff, I know Arthur's worked closely on this, and staff and you as council in really taking advantage of provincial investments and working to best deliver those services. Other funding announcements: Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, OCIF, $308,000 for the municipality. Through the Safe Restart Agreement to help you navigate COVID, the province of Ontario invested over $360 million to support the municipality, really giving you some of that flexibility to meet your needs. OMPF, obviously, $740,900. The Solicitor General Ride Allocation Program to keep people safely going home. That's an investment locally that's important. And also, I also would be remiss, if I didn't also talk to some of the infrastructure projects. Obviously, under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, or ICIP program, we've made a number of investments to local projects in our community. The Township of Hamilton obviously applied for HVAC replacement under the resilience stream, and this was a great example of all governments working together. We were really pleased to work closely with the federal government for them to give us the flexibility for that resilient community stream. And the Township of Hamilton, of course, was successful for the HVAC replacement, for retrofits, repairs, and upgrades. and we'll be receiving over $100,000 to support with that investment. So with that, a lot to unpack there, and there's a lot I didn't touch on. I would be remiss if I just didn't highlight at the end broadband, a $4 billion investment, the largest in Canadian history of any level of government, of an investment into broadband. And that's going to be key. And, I know politicians and money announcements. Let's talk about actual intake streams, shovels in the ground. So ICON, under the first and second intake, we've seen great projects, including right here in Hamilton Township with a number of internet service providers. The county also submitted. So we're going to see a lot of great projects that have already been submitted. We're going to see shovels in the ground soon. And just a proof point, that shovels in the ground piece, and I know Mayor Kane's well aware, but Councillor Lovshin, I know from your time as well on EORN, the Cell Gap project, of $71 million that we announced at Robbins Convenience. If you drive up there in Roseneath and you hit that gap past Robbins Convenience, there's a dead zone. I've been speaking to the Premier on that dead zone. And so we made that provincial announcement there. The feds then followed suit to commit the $71 million on their end as well. This is a great, all levels of government working together. And I'm pleased to say that shovels are now in the ground for that project, which is going to address 99% of cell gap coverage in our region. So that's going to be really key as well. So lots underway. It's important to rebound from COVID, that we're investing in infrastructure, supporting healthy people and a healthy economy. And so with that, I'd love to answer any questions from council, staff, on any questions you might have on budget or anything else for that matter.
Thanks
Thank
very
you for
much,
having
David.
me.
Thank you very much. Start with council. I'll turn it over if there are any comments or questions. Start with you, Mark.
Thank you, David. Always a pleasure. A couple of questions. One may be outside your government guidelines, but income tax deadline. Is there any word of the extension on that, or because of the COVID-19 issues and so forth, people getting their taxes done? Is there anything there? Have you heard anything?
Well, there is. I fully support the leadership of our member of parliament, Phil Lawrence. He's formerly written in his capacity as critic for national for revenue. He's asked the federal government to consider extending that submission deadline. I know for many it's been a challenging time, and that's so needed. So I do think that's something that we can all get behind. This is very much, in the spirit of working together in response to COVID. I support what Phil's put forward, and I think that's something we can all get behind.
Okay, so we may hear something in the next few days. It's getting closer.
I certainly hope so, and I know Phil could use the support with that as well. Council or yourself or council might consider supporting him in that. I'm certainly very supportive of that, giving that added flexibility for our residents.
Great. And my other question, if I could, Mayor Kane, I'd just like to ask, is there any money coming available at all for infrastructure dealing with water plants? I mean, we've had some issue with some of our water plants and some major costs coming forward. Have you heard, or is there anything coming down the pipeline for that in the near future?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. We have been working with staff and Mayor Kane on that file, and I know we're working with Infrastructure Ontario. I've brought this to their attention. I know we have a green stream, hopefully opening in the fall. Another stream with more to come. As soon as I get more information, I'll share on that. But also there's the Infrastructure Ontario Loan Program and a number of others. So we are working with staff and the team on that, and I'm aware of obviously the challenges for the municipality or township, I should say, and want to support you with that. So I'm hoping to see more, and I've spoken to the minister about that as well.
Great. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Any other members of council? Yes, Larry?
Thank you, David. Excellent presentation. Just one question on healthcare. With the West Northumberland physicians recruitment, I was just wondering, we're trying to get increase in FOEs, which are the family health organizations. as we try to increase capacity for those in this area who don't have physicians, a need for additional doctors. Has there been any talk about increasing the FOs in this area?
Well, I'm glad you raised that. I haven't, this is the first I've heard from you, Councillor Williamson, so happy to take that offline with you and work on that.
Okay.
I will highlight understanding the need for more family docs. If I know nobody watches our committee coverage, although it's live streamed and on TV, I know it's few and far between. You have to be a real political, but I did actually bring this up with Mohammed Lashmi, and I'll note in the budget, the government committed to a planning grant for a new medical school with Ryerson University. They're very much cutting edge, forward thinking. And one of the commitments that their president made and that we'd heard was a synergy with Northern and rural Ontario to address some of the gaps that we're seeing. So that really excites me. Obviously, the province, as I said, made a big commitment for 27,000 new healthcare professionals, of which we need nurse leads. We've seen some nurse leads, I think to Trent Hills, for example, and also the need for more family docs. So I would love to take that offline with you, and maybe we could work with Minister Elliott's office on that.
Great. Thank you very much, David. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else on council? I'll open this up to staff as well. I mean, our staff members have questions for our MPP.
Through you, Mayor Kane. I don't have a question, but it's mostly a comment. I appreciate the presentation and the outline of a number of the areas of support that the province is providing. And I know that we're continuing to look forward to working with you. The questions around funding for infrastructure, the modernization support that's been provided. We appreciate, again, all those areas. In the next little while, we'll be looking at now with the most recent provincial regulations around enforcement and the most recent lockdown, looking at how that affects our community and the residents in the township. So I just want to say again, thanks for your cooperation and your leadership. And we look forward to continuing to work for you on some of these issues that are impacting our local area.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you very much, Arthur. I know, this has had an impact for sure, and the new third wave. I mean, these measures come with incredible costs for our businesses, mental health, and I certainly, I understand that it's been really, really challenging, and we've tried, to be as responsive with different programming for mental health supports for our small businesses, to really invest in Ontarians to get through this pandemic. And thank you. I couldn't do it without as I said, a two-way street, really understanding the needs on the ground, and be it some severance issues that we've spoken with the county about, be it the water needs of the community. I appreciate that dialogue and the work that you're doing, because it's a two-way street. And if we work together, I think we can address these issues. So thank you for staying informed. And again, I just even got feedback on Police Service Board with the Solgen amalgamation. Again, leadership from Hamilton Township. So time and time again, that the township is punching above its weight relative to what we're seeing, and stepping forward with new ideas. And it makes my job and the job of government much better when these ideas are coming from our community. I'm a bit selfish, but I like to see these sorts of initiatives coming locally. And there's no monopoly on a good idea. So the great ideas, keep them coming.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Pat.
Hi there. David, it's not so much a question, it's just a comment to keep in, that I'm sure you've heard before, but just keep in mind when the new COVID protocols came out, including the enforcement of the small gatherings and things, it's very different in a community that has full-time bylaw enforcement officers than in a community like ours, which typically goes by complaint only. I'm sure we're going, I know we're talking about it later today in council, but it is something that's going to have a bigger impact financially than it may for some other areas that already has that enforcement piece in place.
No, it's thanks. Thank you for that. It is something, I'll just be very direct. I mean, I think you got to listen as a government without question. Not the best end to the week last week, without question. But it's important to listen to our constituents. I mean, frustratingly, somewhat in irony, we see BC rolling out the very same things that Ontario was talking about last week, to much less public attention. Nonetheless, it's important that we listen to our communities and are responsive. So I think that was important relative to the comments last week. I do know in our community we see a lot of complaints. Mayor Kane and the other mayors, we speak about this on our biweekly COVID-19 touch points, where I'm just trying to advocate for our community, and I hear from our mayors significant concern. I have RV campground owners with seasonal contracts, which the province has allowed as a housing piece, very concerned about people coming out from where the 80% of cases occur, which is that 20% in the GTHA coming out, and I understand the enforcement piece. So certainly, if there's anything additional I can do to support that, I'm happy to advocate. And I know I don't know if any of that modernization or through the Safe Restart would help with a bit of additional a piece to address. Obviously, no one enjoys the enforcement element is a tough one, because our community has responded very well. We've come together as a community, support our neighbors, get groceries for elderly in our community, have each other's back, and that's why we've handled this pandemic well. But you're right, there are some times where people just blatantly disregard, and that's where we see the variants of concern spreading.
So I don't see anyone else. So David, I'll just end by, again, thanking you very much. I know, I really think I have an idea at least of how busy you are in your schedule and all the pies that you've got a finger in. So we appreciate very much you taking the time to spend it with us here today, and best of success.
Thanks very much, Mayor Kane. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for giving me this opportunity for the back and forth. I will follow up, Councillor Williamson, with you on that. Larry, I'd like to connect offline. And also, again, just if I could leave you with one thing, that community building fund, any non-for-profits, please just give me a shout directly on that. And I know maybe up in Harwood or some important areas, I think lots we can do for Hamilton and the residents with that community building fund. Thank you all. Thanks for your time.
Bye, David.
Thank you.
So we're up to section 7, public hearings and meetings if required. 7.1, we need a motion to go to public meeting under section 22 of the Planning Act and section 357 of the Municipal Act. It is recommended the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hamilton acts as follows. The council go to public meeting under the sections that I've already mentioned regarding the refund of taxes, and I have 1:38 as a time. Do we have a mover, please? Thanks, Larry. Seconded by Scott. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Emily, I don't know if you have the ability to reconfigure the pictures. I have. Never mind. I just fixed it myself. Thank you. Sorry. So 7.2, public meeting under section 22 of the Planning Act. Read the official. No, it's a minute now. We haven't finished with 7.1, have we? Do we have some applications for the refund of taxes?
Through you, Mayor Kane, 7.1 was a dual motion. So one
Okay.
for a public consultation on the official plan amendment number 11 for Baltimore Servicing, as well as the tax.
Okay, so the tax is coming a little bit later. Sorry about that. So we're doing the official plan amendment number 11, the Baltimore Servicing. This is a presentation from Fulton. We have Kelsey Jones with us today. Welcome, Kelsey.
Good afternoon.
Can you see the screen with the information in front of you?
I can, just from what I'm seeing right now, the bottom of the slides seem to be cut off a bit. I'm not sure if that's just on my screen or not. Perfect. All right, seems to be fixed now. Great. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everyone can hear me okay. Perfect. Well, good afternoon, members of council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Kelsey Jones, and I'm a land use planner with Photen Planning and Design in Kingston. And I'm here today with my colleague, Mike Keane, to present an application on behalf of the Township of Hamilton for an official plan amendment related to Baltimore servicing and development policy. Next slide, please. To provide some background, Photen was retained by the Township in December of 2019 to conduct a review of alternative servicing options for the Baltimore settlement area. To date, our services have consisted of reviewing various servicing options, reviewing the water systems capital needs assessment report, providing recommendations for future servicing options for the Baltimore settlement area, and preparing the official plan amendment, which is being presented to you today. Next slide, please. The image on this slide indicates that Baltimore is identified as a settlement area based on Schedule A land use of the township's official plan. As well, Baltimore is recognized as a rural settlement area by the provincial policy statement. The PPS is a key part of Ontario's policy-led planning system, which provides policy direction on matters of provincial interest related to land use planning and development. The PPS states that rural settlement areas shall be the focus of growth and development, and their vitality and regeneration shall be promoted. As a result, policies of the PPS and the county and township's official plans direct growth to occur within the settlement area of Baltimore. And this is an area, this is an area where we want to see growth happen. Next slide, please. Baltimore is currently serviced through the municipal Creighton Heights water system and private individual septic systems. The Creighton Heights system currently services about 500 users and has limited remaining capacity. The system has no limitations and requires upgrades in order to continue servicing existing users and would require more extensive upgrades to expand service to new lots. Next slide, please. GM Blue Plan Engineering was retained by the township to prepare a water systems capital needs assessment report to assess the condition of existing water systems and develop a 10-year capital spending projection for its water systems, which includes the Creighton Heights water treatment plant and distribution system. The report confirms that the Creighton Heights system has chronic issues related to well performance, water quality and treatment complexity, operator concerns regarding meeting peak period demand. The original equipment is aging and approaching end of life, and upgrades are needed to bring the system up to current codes. So this report confirms that this system requires significant upgrades within the next few years. Next slide, please. Based on the conclusions of the assessment, the report recommended 4 alternatives to develop a new water system to replace the Creighton Heights system. None of the recommended alternatives, however, are financially viable for the township to undertake on its own without financial assistance from either the provincial or federal government. As a result, costs associated with maintaining and upgrading the municipal water system constrain the potential for growth within Baltimore to continue on partial servicing. Knowing this, future development of Baltimore needs to occur via private water and private sanitary services. Next slide, please. The PPS defines the preferred servicing hierarchy within a municipality as municipal sewage and water services being the most supported and ideal option, then private communal sewage and private communal water services, followed by individual on-site sewage and individual on-site water services. And partial services, which is currently how Baltimore is serviced, is the least preferred option. And the PPS defines this as municipal sewage or private communal sewage combined with individual on-site water services, or the opposite. So municipal water or private communal water combined with individual on-site services, or individual on-site sewage, excuse me. So this option is meant to deal generally with failed private individual servicing or just minor rounding out of existing lots in a settlement area. All of that to say that the PPS does prioritize municipal servicing, but provides direction for other servicing options, such as full private on-site services. Next slide, please. The township's official plan provides the following policy, section 332 in their official plan regarding development within the Baltimore settlement area. So as you can see, the policy indicates that Baltimore will continue to develop on a limited basis with municipal water and private sewage disposal systems. And development by plan of subdivision will only be permitted following the preparation of a secondary plan for the area, which is needed to address issues such as the sustainability of existing systems, cost effectiveness, and justification for the servicing. This policy, as currently written, limits the potential for servicing in Baltimore to occur via full private servicing options and is ultimately not supportive of future development in the settlement area. Other township official plan policies, however, indicate that there is support for other servicing options within both the township and settlement areas. Next slide, please. The proposed official plan amendment seeks to revise section 332 of the official plan. So the policy that was just provided on the previous slide to first allow development to be serviced by private water and private sewage disposal. And second, to remove the requirement for the preparation of a secondary plan. So the proposed revisions to the policy and the new policy as revised is provided towards the bottom of this slide. And ultimately, these changes to sections 332 will support development within the Baltimore settlement area, which is supported by PPS, county, and township official plan, township policy, excuse me. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the proposed official plan amendment, in my opinion, is consistent with the provincial policy statement and that it supports development in the settlement area and aligns with the appropriate servicing hierarchy. It conforms to the township's official plan by supporting development within a designated growth area. And overall, it is my opinion that it represents good land use planning. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation, and myself and my team would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. I'll turn it over to other members of council for questions. I don't see any. You must have done a very clear job of explanation, Kelsey. Members of staff, any questions from you? All right, it was quite clear. And I'm also going to say not a big surprise to any of us as either. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, yeah, if there's nothing further, thank you very much for your time today. And I will see you again all soon. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Great. Through you, Mayor Kane, our manager of water operations has a question she'd like to ask.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have her on my screen. Go ahead, Anita.
We seem to be having connectivity issues. I'll try to bring her in, but we also have a question from a member of the public.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kane. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. Thanks, Kelsey, for your presentation. Just as I'm new as the water operations manager here, I'm learning things rapidly. But one of the first things I learned was the initial reason for our water system to be provided from the municipality was salt contamination in wells and aquifer from application of road salt. So I'm a little concerned that you may be running into this when people try to develop private wells. That's all. Thank you, Mayor Kane.
Do you have any information towards this, Kelsey?
Thank you, and through your worship. I would just like to highlight that despite the amendment to this provision, any applications that would be coming forward would still be required to complete necessary technical studies or supporting studies. So a plan of subdivision being brought forward would still be required to complete a hydrogeology assessment and a terrain assessment to confirm that there is, suitable soil and land available for the septic systems, as well as suitable and available water quality and quantity. So that is something that will be assessed as development applications come forward. And if salt is a concern, that will be flagged and have to be addressed by any developments.
Thank you. And as I understand, we do have the capacity for at least a few additional users on the line. If it was a site somewhere on a main highway with a great deal of salt, we might still be able to include them in the existing system.
Through your worship, that is correct. There is some limited capacity remaining. Generally, though, that will be allocated for minor rounding out of existing lots or severances. Correct on the denser streets or in closer proximity to the existing water services.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm going to go to the clerk and just verify, is this a time where we can take questions from the public?
Yes, Mayor Kane, I believe there's somebody in the gallery wishing to ask questions.
Good. I'm glad for that. Thank you. So I don't know who the question's coming from, but if you can hear me, sir or madam, you have the floor.
Great. It's Linda Gallo speaking, and I do have a couple of questions and comments. First, how many units of water is there currently available for severances and minor rounding out, as Kelsey called it?
I'm going to defer to staff for a number. I don't know if you heard that question or not, Anita.
Yes, I did. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I recently read a 2017 report from GM Blue Plan describing reserved capacity from Creighton Heights. And at that time, they were speaking of approximately 17 connections. I am actually going to have GM Blue Plan refresh that study because I want to see what has changed in the meantime, because I want to have a firm number to work with as I'm approached by various interests in developing lots. I should have that answer hopefully within a month's time. Thank you, Mayor.
Could you somehow get Linda's contact information so that when that number comes through, you could forward it to her?
I can do that, absolutely.
All right. I don't know how you want to, sorry, Linda, I don't know how you want to make a contact with Anita, but.
I can phone her, and there's a
Okay.
few people on staff that know my contact information.
Fine, thank you.
So how does one get access to the study that the whole foundation of this OCP amendment is this study? Like, that's the whole basis of this OCP amendment. How do we as the public get a chance to review that study and look at the 10-year capital plan that Kelsey referred to?
So again, I'm going to defer to people in the know. I don't know if that's a question for Kelsey, or that's a question for Anita, or that's a question for our CAO.
Through
Anyone
you,
have
your
it?
worship, yeah, I'm going to defer to staff for an answer to that.
So we're not hearing anything from staff. How do we get
Well,
this
we do-
information?
Through your Mayor Kane, we have been making some of that information available. I believe the GM Blue Plan information was provided as part of the water rate study background material, and it was made available at that time as well. And I have to double check, but I believe also the related sort of analysis as far as again when the water rate study itself, that was all published, the presentation material was made available. Like I can double check that and work with Linda to provide her that background information that's been posted, or point to where it has been posted.
I have tried searching the website, various ways of getting it, and it just does not come up. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not there.
I do know how to get a hold of you. I'll obviously
Yes.
be able to provide that information to make sure it's available.
Okay, so my next sort of comment is, as I listen to Kelsey's presentation, it seems like there's a bit of a contradiction. Sort of in one of her first few slides, I think it was the first one, she mentioned that the growth is to happen in the Baltimore settlement area, and that's what we're to encourage. But yet by now changing to growth being on wells, if possible, you're actually reducing the number of lots that could be developed in the settlement area by at least 40%. So that seems like it's going to restrict growth, not encourage it.
Through you, your worship, I'll do my best to address Linda's comment and question. You are correct. Typically, lots developed on private wells and septics do require larger lot areas. Now, the amendments to this provision would not restrict a private landowner or a private developer to pay for the necessary upgrades to the water system. Now, I do understand that that's a large financial ask for someone, which is why we are looking to implement this official plan amendment, basically just to allow for greater flexibility for options. So if there was a developer who wanted to come in and provide communal sewage and communal water, they could do that. This gives the option of having that available to them. It's just, this is removing the requirement to connect to the municipal water system, with the knowledge that most people won't be able to do that without significant financial investment. So you are correct. It will require generally larger lot areas, but at the end of the day, this will allow people to develop within the settlement area, whereas right now it's fairly restrictive to new development.
It will absolutely result in bigger lot areas, because on municipal water, it only has to be 0.7 of an acre, a little over 30,000 square feet. And on well, it's got to be a minimum of an acre. That's 40% bigger. And the other thing that this does, it's written right in the OCP that the municipality has an objective of 25% affordable housing. I haven't been able to find any reports that says how the municipality is meeting that objective, but this is not going to help. This can only increase lot prices, and it does nothing towards the objective in the OCP of providing a range of housing types, like additional living units, which is next week's proposed OCP amendment. Next week, we're going to allow additional living units, but they have to be on the existing services that the houses already have. So how much water is going to be available from the existing system to add additional living units to support our youth, rental accommodation, and seniors? It seems like it's impossible. Anyways, it's my comments. If I'm the only person commenting, then clearly I'm the only one in the public that's concerned about what's going to be happening in Baltimore. But we're going to find that Baltimore becomes a community of elitists, because people won't be able to afford to be here, and we won't be providing a range of housing types. And that should be of concern to all of us. And taxes will go up disproportionately for existing homeowners, because we won't have the increase in tax base that we should be trying to do, as well as what about commercial and industrial development? How are we going to be able to even try and get commercial development here if we don't have water?
I'll
Through
jump
your
back
worship.
in. Those definitely are concerns. But unfortunately, without the necessary funds to spend literally millions on the water system that we have, going forward with growth using wells and septics is the only alternative. Other than that, there won't be any growth.
But what are we doing to try and get funds? I know that there is provincial and federal infrastructure funding. And in fact, right now is a really good time because of COVID to be going after that. You know, we have a window of opportunity, and I work independently with the land developer, and we see cases of other municipalities getting 3/4 of funding for water projects, and then the other quarter they do buy a bond or they borrow the money. Great time to borrow money, very low interest rates. And David Piccini even talked about loans in his presentation today.
Yeah, so you heard,
what are we doing to pursue those options?
yeah, so if you heard our NPP, then you would know we are actively involved with him right now, trying to come up with some methods. We're in something of a unique position compared to many municipalities with municipal water, and that would be we only have about 10% of our ratepayers involved in the municipal water service. The other 90% are on wells already. And the majority of municipalities who get involved with these funding, with the provincial funding, are, almost totally on municipal water systems. We're talking more about towns and urban centers than we are a rural municipality like Hamilton Township. So we are in a different position from a lot of them.
But it would only be the Baltimore ratepayers that actually are paying for the Baltimore water system. And they are going to bear an undue burden of past misdeeds in servicing the water system. And there will be less of a ratepayer base to pay for all of the changes that are required to bring that system up to standard. The existing ratepayers are going to bear the burden of that. And I'm on a well, so I'm not speaking. I'm on a well, so I'm fine. But I just think about this is an area where we need to grow the base of people that are going to be paying for the water system, not restrict it.
In my opinion, but the current water users could not possibly afford what it would cost to upgrade our water system.
Well, that's why I asked about provincial and federal financing, because they do fund it.
And we are currently working with an MPP to that end.
Is there a committee? Is there a committee that's been struck of councillors and staff to proceed?
We have tried to organize a water rates committee. I don't know how to put it. We put out, we publicized for volunteer members. So it's to be consisting of 2 members of council, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stav, is it 3 members of the public? Or to
That's
be
right.
honest, and to this point in time, we have 0 volunteers.
I'll volunteer.
Please get in touch with our clerk. Part of the stipulation, we're hoping to get water rate users on this committee.
Well, I'll go talk to my neighbors. I mean, that's easy enough to do, to try and get a neighbor to come in. I mean, we all have a neighbor. You all live in Baltimore, or you all live in Hamilton Township. Surely somebody lives in Baltimore and has a neighbor that they can tell them why this is important.
Yes, Arthur.
If I can answer you, Mayor Kane. So I just want to sort of loop back to some of the comments, which is the purpose of this OPA is to provide flexibility in the options that are available because of the limited servicing. At the same time, so that again is why we're doing this. Does it solve all the problems? No. So at the same time, we have been looking at the engineering requirements as well as the water rate studies to make sure that that facility is both being repaired as well as financially stable in the future. And the last part of that is whether to look for rate changes, government grants, as well as possibilities of loans to pay for those changes in the upcoming years. We've had a meeting with our MPP, as Mayor Kane has mentioned. We're going to continue that. We're obviously going to be making applications to the upcoming ICIP, the Green Stream, or any related funding that will assist us in that. So that's our plan, is to at least pick these pieces that we know of, that we can deal with, and then as other ideas and possible options as far as further servicing in the Baltimore area or the Ontario Street, other options become available. We're going to be pursuing those as well. So that's at least the feedback or a comment I'd like to provide to you, Linda, on that, and hope that's helpful.
Can I just ask, was it ever seriously considered to connect to Coburg, who has lots of water? And if why not? Other than for political reasons.
Through you, Mayor Kane, yes, in fact, we have a servicing agreement that within the last 3 years, we've actually signed this council as well as the council of the town of Coburg and Lucy have an overall servicing framework where connections can occur. And we have that to guide that, so we don't have to revisit it on every time. And we know what the parameters are, and that is one of the options that we still have as far as being a servicing option for our communities. So we have the terms. We've all the councils are aware of it, and that's something that is still a possible option. But as you are aware, probably through your own involvement in the development community, the cost of extending pipes is very expensive. And so that is a factor that has to be considered in any extension. And that is something that would be looked at as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'll jump in. We do have existing agreement, obviously, with the town of Coburg to supply what would be, for some of us older guys, the Butterfields subdivision.
Yeah, a little bit. Mm-hmm.
And we are pursuing with the town for water supply to Pentecostal camp. But the main water main that comes under the 401 at 45 is not operational right now. The town of Coburg, when they went through the 401, actually the reverse happened. Instead of them taking on more clients in Hamilton Township, they stopped servicing the Slater Street, Carlton Boulevard area, and we had to take that on. And that greatly cut into, what water we had available.
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
Okay, well, I thank you for your time and for answering all my questions.
Just want to help clarify that that was part of the technical engineering comment that was required by MTO, as far as they did not want to have the uncertainty around a pipe underneath their infrastructure improvements that were occurring at 45 and 401. And so the connection was terminated. There wasn't a political decision between the town and township about water supply. It was more, again, the decision by MTO to ensure that their infrastructure was not impacted by the considerable investment they were making in the 401 at that time.
I wonder how they handle it in other communities like Belleville, where they're on both sides of the highway. Seems,
again, there's a framework for the extension of service, and we'll be looking at that as an option. So, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other members of the public with questions? Hearing none, if we have nothing else from council or staff, we can move forward. So you need to flop up the agenda for me, please, Emily. I think we're on 7.2, I believe. That would be the one we just completed. So we're at 7.3, public meeting under section 357. Do we need a motion to receive for information, anything that we just covered? Okay, apparently not. 7.3. a public meeting under section 357 of the Municipal Act, a request for reduction of taxes. We have application WO 2021-02, effective date September 27th, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. I have the roll number and the property location. Is there anyone here in support of this application? Hearing none, anyone opposed? Anyone seeking clarification? All right, 7.4 under the same section, the second application, WO 2021-03. Effective dates there, November 13th to December 31st, 2020. We have the roll number and the property location on King Road. Is there anyone here in support of the application? Opposed? Anyone seeking clarification? Hearing none, we'll move forward. 7.5, another application under the same section of the Municipal Act. This is application WO 2021-04. The dates there, January 1st to December 31st, 2020. We have the property roll. It's located at 1 Ford Street. Anyone here in support of this application? Anyone here opposed? Or seeking clarification? Hearing none, we'll look for a motion that council rise from the public meeting under section 22 of the Planning Act for public consultation on official plan amendment number 11, the Baltimore servicing and section 357 of the Municipal Act regarding the refund of taxes, and reconvene to an open session of council at 2:12. Thanks, Larry. Seconded by Mark. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Section 8, no planning bylaws. 9, adoption of the previous council meetings and committee of the whole. So we need a motion that the council of the corporation of Hamilton acts as follows: that the minutes of the regular council meeting held March 16th, 2021 be adopted. Moved by Scott, seconded by Pat. All in favor? That's carried. 10, business arising from those minutes. I see none. Committee reports. 11.1, Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, 22nd of March, 2021 minutes. We need a mover and a seconder. The minutes of the Parks and Recreational Advisory Committee meeting held March 22nd, 2021 be received. Pat and Larry, all in favor? And that's also carried. Thank you. The Accessibility Advisory Committee, a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee held April 13th, 2021 be received. Thanks, Mark. Seconded by Larry. All in favor? That's carried. Anything from those minutes? 13.3 MAS. It's recommended that the Council of the Township of Hamilton acts as follows. The minutes of the Joint Animal Control Municipal Animal Services Board held March 24th, 2021 be received. To have a mover, thanks, Pat, and seconder, Larry. All in favor? And that's also carried. Anything from that meeting? All right. 11.4. The Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority. A mover and a seconder that the minutes of the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority meeting that was held on March 18th, 2021 be received for information. Moved by Scott, seconded by Larry. All in favor? Again, that's carried. Is there anything to bring forward from that meeting? I see none. 11.5. I guess we're looking for a motion at the minutes of the West Northumberland Physician Recruitment Retention Committee minutes held January 2021. We received for information. Thanks, Larry. Seconded by Mark. All in favor? Again, carried. Anything to draw from those minutes from anyone? See, I see none. We're at section 12. We're looking for mover and seconder that the council receives report WTR 2021-0, the MECP inspection reports for 2020 for information. Need a mover, please. Thanks, Mark.
I'd move with the recorded vote, please, Bill.
Yeah, I understand. Thanks, Mark. And seconder was Pat. And so we're going to have the clerk call the questions, please.
Okay. I don't have my list in front of me, so bear with me. It's alphabetical order. But Mayor Kane,
I vote yay.
and Deputy Mayor Jibb,
Yay.
and Councillor Lovshin,
Yay.
Councillor McCourt,
Yay, are we doing both at once?
Yes, Camborne and Creighton Heights. Yes, it's one motion.
yes, and Councillor Williamson.
Yay.
Is that carries?
Carried. Yep.
Mayor
So,
Kane, did you call for, was there a seconder? Councillor Lovshin moved it with a recorded vote.
yes.
So we
Okay.
needed a seconder.
Okay, got Larry's hand up.
Okay.
I thought, as a matter of fact, I thought Pat had already seconded that. But maybe I'm wrong. Did you, Pat? Yeah, I thought so.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see her
Yeah,
hand
it's
on
okay.
my screen.
I exist, Kate.
So we're clear on 12.1.
Yes.
12.2, a mover and a seconder. The council receives the report PW and I 2021-03, which is a tender for information, and that council authorized the mayor and treasurer to award tender number PW 2021-03, which is a surface treatment of various roads within the township of Hampton, township of A&H, a value of $443,690 plus HST to Miller Paving, and that the mayor and treasurer be authorized to undertake all things necessary to execute the contract for the work. Moved by Mark, seconded by Pat. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everyone. 13, Parks and Rec. We're looking for a mover and a seconder. The council authorized the mayor and treasurer to award contract of the Parks and Rec master plan to Think Design in the amount of $72,417.50, including the net HST as received in RFP number Parks 2021-02. Thanks, Larry, and seconded by Pat. All in favor? And that's also carried. Just by note, all of these obviously have come in at a price less than or equal to budget. So there's nothing, we're not asking for any additional funds in any of these motions. Thank you. So we're at Parks and Rec 2021-04. We need a mover and a seconder. The council approves that report, and the Parks bylaw set fines be included in the Parks bylaw. I have a mover, Pat, seconded by Mark. Is there any discussion on this? Yes, Mark?
Just a quick question. I just wonder, where did the $175 come from? Is that a common throughout the province, or is that something that's, I just wonder where that number came from, because everything seemed to be $175 if I remember reading through it.
Question. Do we have anyone on staff that can answer that for us?
It's Trevor. I'm here, Bill.
Thanks, Trev.
So yeah, the question just in regards to the fee, I compared it to some of our neighbors' fees. It's slightly higher than theirs. Our one neighbor is looking at increasing theirs. And it's also consistent with the parking fire route signs that are throughout some of our park areas.
Okay, thank you, Trevor.
Any other questions from council before we vote? So I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? And again, that's carried. Thank you. 13.3.
So Mayor Kane,
Yeah, well, okay, we got that.
we're going to
We're switching this to
14.1.
14.1, so we're going to come back to 13.3. That would be after we'd have our discussion of 14.1. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So is that where we're at right now, 14.1? Yes, it is. Okay. So this is a report to council submitted by our CAO. So Arthur, I'm going to assume you're taking this over from here.
Sure, if I can, Mayor Kane, thank you very much. I wanted to take a moment to walk through portions of the report for council, and obviously if there's any questions, be happy to cover them either during the presentation or at the end. Overall, our recommendation is that council receive this report for information. And then our second recommendation is council then authorize me to implement the strategy with the plans for our parks and parking and enforcement approach that's being identified in the report. And again, that will be also further emphasized by the report under 13.3. And lastly, that council requests that additional items for future implementation be brought back as an update to this plan and as part of future budget approvals. So in other words, there's a number of issues that are outside of implementation in 2021. We know that the Parks Master Plan that they've just asked Think Design to undertake will be informing this process during the course of the year. And so we want further updates that will require expenditures in 2022 and on to be informed both by updates to this plan, the Think plan, as well as the budget discussions in the future. So the purpose of this report is basically to provide us and council with an update on what our waterfront strategy is based on our experience with COVID over the last year, to make sure also that every year we know we have conflicts in our summer season in the waterfront areas, which basically is sort of the discussion or that occurs or the experience that occurs between the anticipated lifestyle of our residents as well as visitors visiting the area. We also want to make sure we guide our operations, the township operations in various departments in the amenities, the investments in the amenities, which will help respond effectively and consistently for our service requests we get. Again, this can be everything from either requests for garbage facilities right through to porta potties, or again, enhancements and investments in the actual facilities themselves. We want to make sure that we continue to manage all these operations within the financial capabilities of the community. And last, provide a plan not only for 2021, but also a context of what will the investments or what are some of the things we're doing this year will have an impact in the future. So as far as the discussion, I've included a number of items here, but I'll try and go through part of that as well. If you could scroll down a little. If I can summarize them to say in 2021, we plan or we propose that we provide more in-park supervision, including the use of private security patrols to help us manage both that resident and visitor expectations over the course of the summer months. This is this conflict or this interaction that occurs that I mentioned a moment ago. We also want to introduce some limitations or restrictions on fishing in the parks and the docks in the 3 identified waterfront areas. And we can talk more about that, obviously. A third theme or third opportunity is we want to add more parking to some of the community areas, including in Harwood area. And we're proposing to look at removing some of the fire route signs in the dock area itself, and the eastern part of that area, as well as some parking along the west side of Front Street where it's possible. And there's more details in the report on that. If I move more to the west from Harwood, we have looking at changes to the Bewdley dock itself. There's a fire route area, and we're planning on chaining that off, safely chaining it off, so it's not a hazard, but making sure we restrict access and keep maintain it as a fire point. We're also looking in Gore's Landing to complete our painting, no parking, fire route up information or updates in those areas, so it's very clear where we're restricting people from having their vehicles. A sixth opportunity we see as being helpful in sort of this package is offering online payments for parking tickets. This is something we're in discussion with our bank presently as being able to provide that service in the future. And then the last one is just as part of our experience last summer. It's not part of the actual waterfront park, but I included it as a package of our park and parking initiatives, is to look at some more parking near the Baltimore Park along Van Leuven, and specifically removing some of the no parking signs along the fence on Van Leuven itself. We've did include a fairly extensive discussion around that on some of the alternatives and options, and that's in the paper that's attached. Financially,
Arthur, can I butt in, Arthur, before we cover
for sure.
great more amount of material? Maybe we could take a few questions as we go along.
For sure.
That's all right with you? Just
absolutely
cut this up into some sections. I think it would be
okay.
better for us. So those of us who don't have minds that are overly complicated, especially. So I'm going to open it up to council. Anything on those 7 points that are being considered that you'd like to discuss? Yes, Larry.
Only just one comment on the Harwood dock area. My only concern with reducing the fire route parking there is if there's an emergency and we need emergency vehicles to be on site, which there has been in the past, will there be enough room to get access to the dock area to provide rescue or service or medical assistance down there? It's my only concern. I understand totally that that's a great idea to reduce the fire route parking area, but knowing people, they just park wherever they want. And I'm concerned about that a little bit, but just that if there was an emergency requiring, equipment down there, that there'd be enough room to access and exit at the same time.
That's a really good question. I know that originally the fire signs were put up because that was being used as a water source, I believe, right? So the tankers, the big trucks were going in there, but they now have alternate sources. I'm going to hope that whatever parking we allow there is still going to allow at least one free lane so that a vehicle could go through there. So, I mean, unless it is a fire there, if it's some sort of a rescue or a medical call, and I think we have fire personnel on present at this meeting, they can support this and put forward their ideas. But I'm assuming that it would be a smaller vehicle responding to a medical. If Kelly or Mike are on the line, could you jump in here now?
Yes, Mayor Kane, thank you. It's Fire Chief Kelly Surson speaking.
Thanks, Kelly.
We have spoke at length about the fire route signs. You are quite correct. We do not any longer use that area for a water pickup source for any tanker or water shuttle operation. I am quite comfortable in the fact that we're making this recommendation to remove the fire route signs from the Harwood dock area.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Clears that up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good question there. Any other questions? Yes, Pat?
I read through the different documents here, so but I sort of thought about them as a whole in my head, so I might be referring to something separate than in this specific document. One of my biggest concerns at the moment, or two of them actually, is we're waiting on the park strategy plan that we just approved for the consultation. So to my mind, most things that we should be doing should probably be looked at as shorter term until we get like, I think there's things we have to decide on and do, but I think that strategy plan might make a difference. But right now, my big concern is that we've got a very strong provincial order in place about size of groups, et cetera, keeping groups individualized. And for Harwood and Gorse Landing, those areas are so small that there's not a lot of space for like just we're going to wander the park. And I'm wondering if we should be looking at a shorter term, what do we do while this provincial order is in effect? Because I'm very worried, especially from what we saw last year, that we're going to end up with more people in the park than we can easily be making sure are being safe. And much as this is a provincial order and they've talked about enforcement, it really does fall on us to do the best we can for it. I'm wondering if we should be considering closing both Harwood and Gorse Landing while that order is in effect, because Bewley is comparatively narrow, but there's like a walking area, et cetera, et cetera. There's not that same, once you're down there, you're bottlenecked. And I think we need to be taking a fairly strong stand on, while that's in effect, this is how we're handling it. I think it's an unreasonable thing to put on our current bylaw enforcement officers to say, oh yes, we're going to have it open and we're going to be enforcing it. And I just want to throw that out there right at the beginning before we go one way and then go, oh, well, what are we doing for the moment? Dead silence.
I'm happy to provide one comment on that, which I may. You're quite correct. The strategy plan, this is providing mostly a focus towards our activities this year. However, I wanted to include some information that's come from our waterfront management strategy in the past, so that there's a context to our plan about what we're doing. However, the master plan will be the one where we really drive out, get the input of the community and council as how it will be dealing with investments and that in the future. So I understand your comment, and I hope it's clear that this in no way is going to preclude the results of that study. It's to try and keep it informed and say there's a context, and this is something we've been working with the last few years. It's been updated for this year to take out things that have already been done in the past, and it was meant as a refresh in that. So moving to your second part of your comment, and again, thanks Mayor Kane for allowing me to sort of carry on about it, but the intention of it is we started this work some time ago. There's a fair amount of effort's gone into it, and just like we found with COVID last year, every week is a new week. And now we're faced with the emergency declaration being extended, and we will, I think, through this discussion, come back to sort of have a step back and say, is this enough, or do you want to have anything further? And that can include everything from either partial closing, further restriction of activities, or otherwise. But I hope through this discussion we have some of that direction from council about things you would like to pursue. And we've seen some of the other communities nearby take some of those steps, either through closing their facilities or further restrictions. So again, I know that Trevor has had regular meetings with his colleagues, and that's again something that we can have as part of this discussion as well, I hope.
Yes, Pat.
Yeah, I wasn't at all suggesting that anyone had sort of gone ahead with this, not thinking about COVID. I realize how new this latest shutdown is. I just, since it's the one that's kind of in our face, I just feel like maybe we should be looking at that first. If you're talking about overall picture for the next year or two, my other comment would be, is I think that we should at least be considering limiting or stopping fishing on both Harwood and Gorse Landing docks, because a lot of the people that we get down there, it's specific for the fishing, but that ends up being what congests us for parking, what congests us for people. So, like I said, I don't know if it's whether to limit or close it. And just to throw in, I guess it falls more on the COVID side, is that I really think we have to be strongly considering how much we're asking of staff in terms of any kind of enforcement at this point.
Thanks, Pat. Yes, Scott.
I support a great deal of what's been said up until this point in time. I was wondering if we could look at a early summer midpoint review and report back to council in the idea that a number of these changes are quite new. We don't know how they're going to work in relationship to COVID, and that we might need to adjust midpoint. And I would suggest that we possibly could be advantaged by having a review in the near future, sort of thing.
Sounds reasonable to me. We'll talk to staff about it.
Very much so.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. I'll throw in my 2 cents worth. The weekend before last, we had a summer-like day, and I can tell you, my weekend was ruined. Trevor's weekend was ruined. I don't know about Kelly and his crew, whether their weekend was ruined, but that is a precursor of what's going to happen every weekend for the rest of the summer if we don't do something. Last year, I tried to be open-minded about, people needing a place to get outside and so on and so forth, but I'm beyond that at this point. As David said earlier, 80% of the COVID cases are in the GTA. And while there's hundreds of thousands of people up there who are doing everything they can do to try to control the virus, to get their shots, social distance, do everything, there are thousands who are not. And many of those thousands wind up here on the weekends. And I strongly believe we need to take a little stronger measures to protect our ratepayers. Our ratepayers feel like they're being barricaded in their homes, afraid to even come outside. And at this point, I'm going with Pat. I mean, the fishing is a huge problem. At the very least, we should consider closing the fishing on the weekends. Maybe we can leave it open during the week for our ratepayers and shut it down on the weekends. I don't know what the logistics of that would be, but I think we should at least consider that. Because if we get rid of the fishing on the weekends, we're going to get rid of 50 to 75% of the people who are coming there, standing shoulder to shoulder. They've got so many fish lines in the water, nobody could swim. There's dead fish everywhere, 2 and 3 inches long, laying on the shores. I mean, we need to harden down. Yes, Larry.
I think the committee that they formed here got that in there, the introducing limitations or restrictions on fishing. I think they've really thought about that. Your idea of the weekend cease fishing and during the week maybe differently. The only other comment that I have, because I think they've done a very extensive work on this, is that, as you, Mr. Mayor, said that you got calls on the weekend. Well, we all got the calls on the weekend last year. If we had one number we could call instead of trying to call Trevor and Kelly, but I understand, and I may get this wrong, but that the fire department is not going to be a focal point here, or the Parks Department. I think this private security company is going to take more of an active role, because I may get this wrong, but are we on a complaint basis, or is this going to be a regular scheduled patrol basis? So maybe we could just get clarification on that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
So through you, Mayor Kane, in response to the question, which we will be having further discussion under the 13.3 private security report. The proposal at this point and resourcing being requested is to have that as a regular patrol on the weekends, in addition to a day or so selected during the week, so that we have complementary week enforcement, or we have some further sort of supervision during the course of the week in the evenings. So we'll have staff available during the week, be they Parks and Rec staff, fire staff, and it's enforcing sort of parking or parks bylaw who are available. We'll have the private security as a complementary, both for the evenings and the weekends, to get away from that sort of 24/7 approach and have that resource accordingly from the township.
I'm going to go to Mark. He hasn't had a chance to weigh in yet, Pat. I'll get back to you.
I agree with a lot of the comments that have been said, especially by Pat and further by Scott. I mean, dealing with the fishing, I know Port Hope canceled its fishing this year for trout fishing. And I know we have to make a decision. If we're not going to allow fishing, I think we need to make that decision here today, because pickerel fishing will open between now and our next council meeting. So I'm supportive of that. I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, there's too many people out on those docks, and if we want to stop this COVID from spreading and do our part, like everyone else should be doing, and then it's time to say, hey, let's not allow fishing.
Go to Pat next, and then you, Larry.
Just so that I understand, I'm not sure in terms of enforcement of groups in the park. That OPP, if they're called, would the private security be able to issue tickets? Because I really believe that if people start to say, yes, in Hamilton Township, you can get a ticket for this, it will stop things more quickly.
All right. So through you, Mayor Kane, the direction that we'll be going and working with the clerk as well as the senior staff is to have that enforcement capability extended to the private security individuals. So we have to take a number of steps to do that, but we will work with them to be able to enforce our parking, our parks bylaw, and that's the direction we're taking. We do need to work with the province through the courts to make sure that it's set up correctly. But that's the direction we're going with this.
Okay, and we're not expecting our park staff on their normal rounds to be in the position of having to be the enforcer of tickets and things, correct? Because I don't think that should fall on them.
There are, through Mayor Kane, there's a select number of people in the township who can, but for example, some of our parks staff who are doing maintenance, we're not expecting them to write tickets as such. In answer to your question. Okay.
Oh, back to you, Larry.
I think a lot of confusion's coming in too, also from the province. The other day they said the parks would be closed. Now they're coming back and saying that parks can be opened. So the public's going to get really confused and very upset. I think if we're going to close the parks, then we better make it well known in the newspapers. I don't think we can rely on our Facebook and website, which are doing a fabulous job. But the comments is that we're going to have to get the message out that either if we're going to close the docks, not have fishing, not have boating, then we have to make it more readily aware, out there in the marketplace. That's my comment. So
yeah, I concur, Larry, with the confusion out there. It's just rampant. And this stay-at-home order, I mean, we have ratepayers who think it is actually an order. They think that anyone who goes out should be fined, but it's not really an order. It's simply a suggestion. There is no enforcement attached to it. But we have some people who think it is. So, I mean, no wonder they're upset to see these people out in the public. So, yeah, communication is a big issue right now. I saw your hand, Scott.
Thank you. I guess a pointed question to you, Arthur, if I might. If we were to move forward and prohibit, as we've just discussed, fishing on the weekend and maybe after hours or something, whatever we decide here today, do we have the enforcement tool of adequate size and strength to enforce that? Because if we do not, then we are kidding ourselves of making this a practice of no fishing when we shouldn't be. If the enforcement tool is not there, we're not doing what we really should be doing. So that's my question, Arthur, please.
It's a very good question. We don't want to set up a policy through American. We don't want to set up a policy or a rule that we can't enforce and that we can't make clear to the public. When we started down the route of having no fishing, we went back to the data, and Trevor was able to go back to some of the data from last year, and we did find a huge correlation between the number of people in the park and fishermen, fishers in the parks in general. So that's why we were proposing to restrict fishing in the parks this year and have it across all 3 waterfront communities. Then if we go down that route, then we do need the enforcement piece of that. And with the private security proposal that you'll be looking at, having 12-hour shifts on the weekends, going amongst the 3 communities, plus shift in the evenings during the week, I think that will go a long way towards it. It's not having someone posted to each park, which would be a certain financial commitment, but it is going towards the piece of having the sign. We'll have communication, we'll have signage, we'll have local posting right on the docks themselves. We'll have ways of communicating it. We'll have enforcement staff advising and then ticketing as again, as the powers are extended to them or as they're set up to be able to do that. So I think it's something we can manage. I'd obviously look for any comment from some of the staff in the township. Trevor has been also talking to some of his colleagues, but that's our plan as far as communicating, posting, and staffing, resourcing with the private enforcement. We think will go a long way to help us control that real pressure or crush on those waterfront areas. Trevor, did you have anything further to be able to add to that, or anyone else for that matter?
Yes, just through your mayor. Also, in addition to that, I have spoken to the Ministry of Natural Resources in regards to whether they will assist us in the component of no fishing. So once we determine, or once council determines the direction we take, I will be sending them a request in regards to assisting with that.
Thanks, Trevor. So I see nothing else. I'm glad we stopped when we did. Just the questions would have been insurmountable by the end. So if we're good with that section, Arthur, let's tackle the next one.
Okay. I'll carry on through the next parts. Again, the discussion in the paper, the options is outlined. At least we hope it's providing at least a more extensive context to this short report. Financially, the estimate and the projection for the cost for parks and parking service in 2021 is projected to be $30,000. This is including both what we call our regular summer period of Victoria Day through to Labor Day in the fall. However, just given the note that Mayor Kane had mentioned a moment ago, and we know that staff were out in the parks the weekend before last, we're looking at also allocating funds in this budget for what we call a shoulder season. So prior to May 24 and after September, into the middle of September of the long weekend. And that $30,000 includes a figure of approximately $5,400 to fund the private security during that time as well. As far as generally, we don't believe there's any additional staffing required over and above our ongoing operational insight or involvement by the staff that have been involved in that or be working with the contract staff. Our general comment on legal is that the updates are required to our parks bylaw and the set fines, and that's one issue just dealt with previously, as well as the ability to enforce our bylaws, both parks and parking, is something we do need to finalize with our staff and contractors and ensure that they are given the proper authority, both through discussions with our prosecutor as well as the regional courts. And I don't believe there are any other further legal implications because we're trying to do this within the context of the provincial orders and the emergency orders that have been provided, as well as our powers under the Municipal Act. The policies affected are, again, our parks bylaw and the other ones identified here. We believe a lot of these efforts are helping with our strategic plan. And again, sort of takes me to the conclusion. So I guess we're looking for that direction from council on whether to proceed with the I believe 7 or so items that we've identified, which would again include the private enforcement, the restrictions on parking, the budget allocations to allow us to secure that resource and ensure that that we have that enforcement capability within our community. And I'm happy to take any other questions on that.
So in that summary, Arthur, you didn't mention a ban or partial ban on fishing.
So I'm going to ask Emily to scroll back up if you can to the 7 items, I think, sort of key. We did under item 2, I wanted to have the discussion so we know how far to go, but to introduce limitations or restrictions on fishing in the parks and the docks in the 3 identified waterfront areas. If through this discussion today, we're agreeing that it's either a limitation or restriction is 7 days a week, or is it on that's focused simply on the weekends? And I'd also be happy to have any comments from Trevor on the complications or restrictions on being able to achieve that. But our plan was to just limit fishing this summer, and perhaps, as Deputy Mayor Jibb has mentioned, revisit that 2 months in or so to say this is working for us, or we can make a change to either further enhance it or to reduce it as needed.
Thanks, I'm good with that.
So through your mayor, it's Trevor, just to add to that, in the bylaw, in the parks bylaw, the one that we just looked at approving the fines, there is a section in there for temporary closures, and it permits the manager of parks and facilities, the CAO, the director of fire and emergency services, by law enforcement officers, to close any park or portion thereof a park at any time due to overcrowding, traffic congestion, and various items. So we do have whatever direction council would like to go, we do have the ability to make changes throughout the year and make these adjustments within the current bylaw that we have.
And just if I can through Mayor Kane, Trevor, our plan right now is to have a full closure of parking during the course of the week.
I didn't understand that question, Arthur.
In other words, we're looking at not simply having fishing during the week and closed on the weekends. We were looking at just not permitting fishing at this point until we reevaluate it further later in the summer. That's a fair comment, correct?
Correct.
So I just want people to understand that that's our direction, is to, again, limit fishing 7 days a week for the next, period till we come back with an update report, perhaps in June.
I could see some pushback on that one, especially in the Harwood area. That, you know, the old railway bed there is a really popular fishing spot with local ratepayers. I know the area seems like a small area, but in actual fact, you know, you could. Well, I shouldn't say this. I've been there years. Larry, can you still make your way out to the Gap?
You take a chance, but you can get out there.
You might get a wet foot.
Okay.
They're also using the other 2 little accesses to the water here. I forget what it's called, the Stony Park there, Stony Pier Park, and the also Lookout. Now we found out during Pauline Browse, God bless her, was down there cleaning that Stony Pier Park, or the Lookout Park down to the water. And I hadn't been down there in my life, but I did find out that there are steps that go right down to the water. And apparently some people are using that now. And it's very dangerous. So I think I spoke to Trevor about the fact that maybe we should close that off, just from a concern of liability. But people will make their way down to the water, you know. So that's about that.
I can't through Mayor Kane. I think Trevor had a comment or his hand raised. about
Yeah,
that?
if I can, just in discussions to that, we do have the ability, again, as I discussed the bylaw, we have the ability to make the adjustment throughout, and given the stay-at-home order that's in effect currently, there is that option to close them off until the end of that stay-at-home order, and then reevaluate and still come back, and we can also provide an update at the May council meeting as the status of where we're at that, if that would work for council.
When's the stay-at-home order go to at this point? I know that it can be extended again, but
It's the 6th of May.
so it doesn't.
It's actually later.
It gets beyond that.
My understanding was it was the Friday before the long weekend in May, or the Thursday, one of that
21st.
week.
The
20,
16th,
sorry?
19th or something.
21st, I believe.
You see all the confusion?
Yeah,
Well, the
it is
21st is the Friday
21st.
before the long weekend in May. So that is the understanding I had as well. Thanks, Trevor.
Yeah, it
But
is
you're right.
21st.
Okay, Pat.
I was going to say, so my personal opinion after all the discussion is that we should look at closing fishing for the weekends. And I do it for right through this year to see how much difference it makes so that we can reevaluate for next year. Because if we just do it for part of the year, we're going to get results really affected by COVID. But hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll know how much is COVID and how much is life. And I think there would be a lot of pushback if we close it completely, but during the week you will only get local residents. So that's my lean on that one. The only one I was debating was for chaining off the dock at Bewdley. If there were no fishing, would they still be able to fish off the dock in Bewdley? If we didn't take away fishing? Like we're chaining it off so they can't park on it, correct?
If I can, through Mayor Kane or Trevor, you can correct me, that the intention, or Kelly, the intention was to chain off the pickup dock, wharf, the original sort of wharf area. But the actual finger docks that we have off the main part of the dock presently would be open for people coming across the lake and using that docking facility.
Okay. So I don't know how you're going to end up doing this motion wise, etc. But to me, closing the fishing for the weekends for this year to see what impact that has would give us a much better idea of how much the community is using it to how much the world is using it. We'd also look after not putting a date on it with the COVID, with the impacts of COVID. I still would like to see Gore's Landing and Bewdley parks closed until the stay-at-home order is done. So I know it's sort of two different issues, but those are both my leans.
So do we need some sort of a consensus here from members of council as to whether that's weekends only or totally throughout the week? I think we need to give Trevor some direction.
Yeah.
I believe Mark's weighed in on full closure. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. I don't mean to speak for you, but
I was only going full closure while the shutdown was on.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I don't see why we can't review this. I don't see why we have to make a year-long decision, Pat. There's no reason we can't review this.
Yeah.
Review it monthly. We want to.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree
just
with that.
worried about how rarely.
I agree with that.
Right. It's just to me how rarely we meet, because if the closure order goes to right after our May council meeting, and then we're saying, well, okay, it goes to closure, then we put it back in place that they're open, and then we meet 3 weeks later and say, no, it's closed again. That was all I was thinking about, was how we make the logistics work.
It's Trevor who actually has the authority to do that. He can do that without we don't have to have a council meeting. We don't have to pass a bylaw. Trevor has that authority. I mean, I'm thinking he would very likely at least pay us the decency of sending us an email and say, this is what I'm doing. But he really does not need, he doesn't really need our permission to do that. So
I was more thinking that he might not want it to just be his decision. That was where I was going with it, but I'm fine with Trevor making that decision.
can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. So if I could take us backwards a step, I think what we need to do here is give direction.
Fine.
We don't have consensus yet. Is it weekends fishing closed, or is it all closed until further notice? Larry.
I agree, closed under the lockdown right now, and then consider opening up after that.
So that's 2 for sure. Larry, we've heard from Larry. Mark, Scott is 3. So
I'm fine with that during lockdown.
okay, so there's the consensus. Then we do agree that we'll go with full shutdown at least during the lockdown period to be reviewed.
And can we bring this back in May, Bill?
Yeah,
Because
so I said, Mark, to be reviewed. So we can review this. We can review this at every council meeting. There's no reason not to.
Mhm.
Oh, it won't take this long, surely. To get If we have to, we'll put a 10-minute limit on it if we have to. Yes, Larry, you agree?
So I just have one question with regards to the fire department. Have we allotted funding for the fire department if it's after hours for overtime and stuff like that? Because we're factoring in during the day, but during the week on overtime if it's required. Have we factored that into the budget?
So through making the budget amounts are designed to have this push towards canine security to be able to do that, so we can rely on them to not have to rely on fire department or Parks and Rec staff going and responding to those kinds of events. It's primarily weekend focused versus the weekdays. There is still some money in the budget with respect to parking for staff, but we're thought sort of plan wise is that if the funds are allocated for the private, we can rely on them as being our enforcement arm. Did I answer that clearly? There is the funds, but our direction is to have private to help and be the,
Yes, thank you.
the focus. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
So we've got the direction for you then, Trevor. Any more questions from staff?
No, the only other question is we're making the changes for the fishing. We'll be making those physical changes for the chaining, the restriction of areas, and then we'll obviously be complementing this with communications and supporting signs and social media as well.
So do we need any motion to receive this for information and any direction for staff? Do we need something like that? Yes, Pat?
We talked about, we came to consensus on fishing. Did we decide whether or not we were closing those 2 smaller parks while the order is in effect?
That's the parks Larry referred to. I don't think a decision was made. Have you viewed those areas, Trevor?
Yes, obviously and the majority of the activity in them parks is being fishing. So I think by my personal feelings that by eliminating the fishing, we will eliminate any gathering or crowds within them areas.
So Pat's question, will 2 little parks be included? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So Mayor Kane,
Yes.
if council wishes to pass a motion with respect to the full closure during the shutdown order, because the report alludes to different options, so perhaps you might want to start with a motion to do that, and then a motion to approve the reports. We've got 2 of them, so you can either start with the 14.1 and go back to 13.3, or just provide the motions in the order they are on the agenda.
Yeah, let's provide the motion for what we've just discussed.
Okay,
So the wording you would like is that we're giving the direction that for full closure during the shutdown.
For full
that's
closure during lockdown.
closure
That's
of
right.
all parks
Yes.
during the provincial shutdown order.
Yes. Now, what does that include? Baltimore Park, Trevor?
No, sorry.
No,
Are you talking full
for fishing.
closure of the parks or just fishing?
Fishing, right.
Fishing.
Just fishing. Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's just a fishing.
So do we have a mover then? Thanks, Pat. Seconded by Larry. Are we all in favor? That's carried 5-0. Thank you. And then we need a motion just to receive the report for information.
So then that is part of 14.1. So then you'll need a motion to approve the report and
Approve, yeah.
recommendation.
Okay. Okay. So not to receive, but to approve. Thanks, Scott. And seconded by Mark. All in favor? That's carried 5-0.
Is that us approving the money for the canine that's included in there?
We're going back to 13.3 for the bylaw enforcement contract.
Right.
I was okay, but that's going with the numbers that are in the report we just looked at. That table where we know we're over budget, but we're approving it anyway. Okay, that's what I was trying to find out. Thank you.
Great. So let's go to 13.3.
Great.
Wait our way through this one.
Just take a moment to pull up. Thank you. There. Trevor, are you able to proceed with that?
Okay, so yes, report PNR 2020-2105 is a report to asking to engage in a contract with Canine Security for the parks and parking bylaw. We've used this company last year during the pandemic when we realized that we had an issue. We engaged in a contract with them. They provided us with quite a bit of supporting document that was helpful through this process this year in regards to using the park and when. So therefore, they've been very successful. They do other projects within the county, in the forest, and with some of our neighboring communities. And they are very willing to adjust their schedule to what will work for our needs. Based on whether it be weather or peak times during the week and on weekends. So that's kind of the background of it. I'm not sure if you have any questions I can answer in regards to the company.
Any questions from members of council? I have one, just sort of some input, Trevor. And I am in favor of contracting this group. I just want to make sure that when we do sign that contract, that they have specific directions as to what it is they are enforcing. Because there was some confusion last year where, people complained that they sort of had some idea that they had police authority, and clearly they do not. They cannot stop vehicles or, do those kinds of things. And so we just need to make sure when we hire them, and I know they have police background, so that kind of thing would seem natural to them, but we need to be specific so that we don't run into, ratepayer complaints about them overstepping their bounds, I guess is the way I'm trying to put it.
Mayor, the main purpose of this is the parking and parks bylaw, which they do carry the parks bylaw. And I know they last year in that component, and yeah, I understand there was a few comments about what they're doing. And I guess the question is still, I think it's pretty straightforward for the parks and the parking. And there's still the question of the stay-at-home order and the provincial regulations and whatnot, and assisting with that. I don't know that that's something that they can find, or whether it's just an educational component or how that works. I can't answer that. I don't have the answer to that, or I'm not sure if anybody does at this point.
Yes, Scott.
I was just wondering, who would K9 report to? And who would they take direction from on a weekend situation? Or any day of the week, but in particular on the weekend?
So it's a challenging question. We'll have to arrange for coverage connection back. We have a focus to the parks and parking issue. Had a shared accountability with fire in the past on the parking component. The parks component have been for Parks and Rec and facility staff. I've been in touch with obviously both of them over the course of the year. The plan is to have this being a parks and parking contract that initially arranged through Trevor. However, we want to make sure that something's working. We'll have to reevaluate any reporting, contact, and ensuring that they're delivering upon what we expect over the course of the summer.
I simply would like to follow that up, if I might, Bill. We need to have that very clear and very much understood by K9 themselves,
yeah,
as well as our own staff, so that we don't find ourselves in position where K9 is doing the work and our own staff are supervising multiple hours,
correct,
too many hours and too late of hours on an ongoing basis.
That's a fair comment.
Thank you.
Pat?
So just so I'm clear, specific to COVID, if you have a large group gathering in a park, K9 could suggest to them that they're not following the provincial law, but they could not write a ticket even though bylaw enforcement officers can. I know that they've really cut back on what the police powers were, but in terms of in a group setting, my understanding was that was bylaw enforcement. And if they cannot write a ticket, are they to be contacting the OPP? Like if we have a big party happening up, well, even in Baltimore, we're talking about the playground and, families deciding we're going to have a family party basically with our groups that are still intermingling. How does that work in? Because my understanding from what I read in the paper was that bylaw enforcement would be during the stay-at-home order being able to do that. Anybody know the answer?
I think we got the order on Friday. We looked at the immediate implications of it. We saw further police powers that were added and now step back in some parts. However, if there are large groups, the overall thrust of that policy direction was to say, don't go out in large groups and gather, or you'd be subject to the fine provisions of the act. So we're trying to better understand it, what it means. Do we have the right people with sufficient powers within our community to be able to enforce that? We don't have like a full-time person doing that. So that's why we'll be working with staff, implementing, looking at the order, how we can enforce it, and making sure we've got staff with the right authority to be able to do that, and the extent that we can do that as well.
Yeah, so that's my sort of only where I was going with it, is if they are allowed to do that, and if we're running into an ongoing issue with that, I personally believe that issuing some tickets would get that stopped fairly quickly. I mean, people are talking about how in Cobourg they're ticketing people, and Port Hope they're ticketing people. So I know that they may or may not be able to, but if they are able to, I think we should let them.
So we have police board services on Thursday, Pat, and maybe Mark could be sharp enough to remember to bring that question forward. I might if I write it down, but I still might not remember, Mark. So I'm going to lean on you a little bit here. See if you could remember to bring that up.
Well, I had my hand up to say just your very words.
Oh.
So that was.
Okay, sorry.
It'll be interesting to see if they know the answer. Things are moving so quickly and changing so much.
We are allowed to send an email out to council about that. That's not breaking any meeting rules if we pass that information on.
Sure.
Okay, we'll do that, Pat.
Thank you.
And in fact, I would even invite, maybe Arthur would be part of that group on Thursday so that he could hear the, and maybe he may need to know that answer to pass that on to his own staff, so.
Happy to. I obviously will be able to sit in on that meeting as well, for sure. Thanks.
All right, so we're moving to, we discussed 13.1. I think we talked, 13.3. I think we talked it out pretty well.
Yes.
So we need a motion that council pass a bylaw to give authority to K9 and their identified staff to enforce provisions of the parks bylaw and the parking bylaw for the 2021 parks and parking program.
Does it need to add that it's at, so I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I had a hand up. Does it need to add that that we're approving the over budget amount? Because it's like $12,000 over budget.
Sorry, Pat, your computer broke up right when you were trying to speak and we didn't hear you.
I just know if in the motion we had to say that we're approving it at the over budget amount because we're like just about $12,000 over budget.
I think we covered that in 14.1, didn't we?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we've got that covered, Pat.
Okay.
We did.
So through Mayor Kane, we do have that higher amount identified in the budget, and we'll report to council as we progress through the use of those funds. And our intention also is to manage that contract and funds as best we can, but obviously looking to sources to recognizing that this is a financial commitment to deliver on this priority this summer.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, thank you. And I have a seconder. Thanks, Larry. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. 14.2, the Ad Hoc Water Committee update. We need a mover and a second. The council receives report CAO 2021-03, the Ad Hoc Water Committee update for information. Moved by Larry, seconded by Mark. Any discussion about this?
Is it something we can put in the next water bill?
I think that's being considered already, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is, through your Mayor Kane. In the report, we've identified that we'll be increasing our social media outreach, Facebook website, and including a mail out that's been printed and will be inserted in the water billings in the next few days to ensure that we target those people in particular.
I missed that in the report, sorry.
No problem.
And while we're discussing that, the volunteerism, there are two members of council who were to sit on that committee as well. And up to this stage, Pat's volunteered, but I believe Pat already leads the race in a number of committees that she sits on. So
I was happy not to. I was just saying if other people didn't work, but I will step down.
That was by no
somebody else picks up.
That was by no means a criticism, Pat. I very much appreciate that you were always willing to step forward. If I had one other member of council, I could probably be talked into going on. Or if there were two other members of council, my feelings would not be hurt. So.
Bill, if I could just mention that it was brought forward at our committee level, and I know I'd mentioned at that time that I don't see a reason why the committee could not be part of our Public Works and Infrastructure Committee meeting, perhaps directly right after it, so that it wouldn't be time consuming to staff and along with time consuming for council members. In fact, I wouldn't even look at charging any extra because of it. So, I mean, Scott sits on that with myself, and we also have Anita there anyway. So perhaps that could be thought of or talked about at your corporate level, and see what you come back with. But
Okay, thanks, Mark. That's a novel idea, and obviously we're going to need some input from our clerk just to make sure about all the legalities and so on and so forth. So,
yep.
Okay, thanks. Can we make a note of that so that it does come up to corporate, or we could even discuss it sooner if CAO and clerk want to discuss it, but go ahead, see if it's feasible. But it should be on hopefully our next corporate services. At the 4th, I believe.
We can add that to the committee, and just to the point of this report, Mayor Kane, was just to make sure council was aware that we're trying our very best to get this committee started. We're also just trying to make sure through this discussion today that we're promoting the committee itself, or the formation of the committee. And as part of that, the committee itself would review the terms of sort of its mandate over the course of the next few months. So thanks.
Okay. So we've had a mover and a seconder to receive. All in favor? That's carried also. Thank you. 14.3. It's recommended the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hamilton acts as follows. The council receives report CD 2021-04, being a request to delete a registered site plan agreement be received for information, and the council directs the municipal clerk to proceed with the application to delete of a site plan control agreement from the title of lands described as part lot 35 concession 8, being part 1 and 2 on a plan 39 R6117 in Bewdley. And that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any and all required documents prepared by the municipal solicitor to permit this action. So we had this information in our pre-reading. Is there anything you need to add, Kate?
Not at this time. If there's any questions from members of council, I'm happy to answer.
Open for you, council. Seeing none, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder then. Thanks. So I got Pat and Scott. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. The accessibility compliance. It's recommended that the Council of the Corporation Township of Hamilton acts as follows. The council receives report CD 2021-05, accessibility compliance for documents and websites for information. And the council approved the initial purchase of AbleDocs products and services using funds as follows: $9,000 from the Accessibility Advisory Committee 2021 operating budget and $5,000 from general reserves. And the council authorizes annual AbleDocs licensing and maintenance fees from 2022 onwards to be funded through the levy. Thanks, Pat, for moving, and Mark for seconding. Discussion. Yes, Mark.
I'm just going to bring forward, I'd just like to say a few words on this. It's been discussed Accessibility Committee times now, and they're very supportive of this project. In fact, without it, we can't really have a website. So it's something we have to have. Unfortunately, the initial cost is fairly expensive because you get a lot of training and so forth to do. But end result is after that, you're looking at about $3,000 a year, give or take. So it's not too expensive after the first year. Just the initial year setup is very, as you can see, theirs is 14,000. And that's the other thing I wanted to bring forward. If I could, I'm a little worried about the 14,000. I would really like to see us raise that to 15,000. So I know accessibility's given 9. It's going to be very, very tight to get that 14,000, especially if staff have to get some help or extra, if they have questions and so forth that require any kind of expertise. There's a cost to it. And I'd really like to see us, and I know I've made the motion, but I'd like to just amend that motion to leave it at 9 and then raise that to 6 from general reserve. If we don't use the 6, then all the better. But if we do need it, at least it's there and ready to go. So
I go back to Pat because she actually made the motion. But would you favor that, Pat?
I think this is a necessity, so I am quite comfortable with that amendment.
So that's an amended motion. You're still going to second that then, Mark, at the 6,000 level?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think you've answered the question I was going to ask. What are the annual licensing and maintenance fees? That's the $3,000 you referred to, is it?
Approximately 3,000. It may come out a little bit more than that, depending on what other functions staff may need during the year, but that's going to be the minimal cost. It may come up, there may be some additional costs, but it's not going to be nowhere near what it is this first year.
Any further discussion? Yes, Larry?
Just a comment that a number of our clients in the past have used Able Docs, and they're highly recommended. So I know that if anybody has any questions about their capabilities, they're industry leaders. So that's my comment, and I think it's a great idea.
Scott?
I'm just wondering about the future. I support this. It's on the table for today, but I'm wondering about that future. Does this give it an open, if we vote yes on this, does that give us an open end commitment regardless of price in future levies?
It seems that would be the way, but I don't see that we couldn't. I mean, at some point, if it got to a number that we felt was unmanageable, I can't see why we couldn't bring it back. But as Mark said, without this, they can't have a website. So.
Well, I accept that, but I mean, we're making a motion in support of this for future councils, for future budgets, without any conditions tied to it. And I'm not so sure that's what we really want to do.
So would you like to have it reviewed by each council?
Yes, or subject to budget approval or something like that.
We're going to have to go back to Pat and Mark because they're the original movers and seconders.
I don't want it to be anything too much. We ran into the same issue at the library where so many of our databases are online and we have an annual fee. And one year we got just knocked out of the water because it got raised partly because of some funding that had come back. But to my mind, where we'll mostly be is if the amount gets too high, then we'll end up looking to see if there's another provider because we're going to need the service regardless. And just like we don't put any limits on, okay, well, we need insurance, but we expect that our treasurer and our technology people will be looking to say, you know what, this is getting out of hand. We should at least review it. I think our staff do that automatically. I don't really want to put an extra tie in. It will come in automatically at budget as expense each year. So unless Scott feels incredibly strongly and has good wording, I don't want to add anything more.
Mark?
If I may, I agree with Pat. The reason that last sentence came in there, Scott, I believe was the accessibility committee wanted to be assured that they were only going to pay a one-time payment. They didn't want to continue yearly. So they wanted to be sure that from here on, it was going to go back to the levy and the levy would look after this project. So it is a software commitment. And I mean, these are really almost the only people that do this. I mean, we did talk to staff and there really isn't a lot of companies out there that do what we need to have done. So as I say, that last sentence was mainly in there to make sure that from here on, the levy would look after it, not come back to accessibility and have them look after the maintenance fee.
Well, Scott?
Yeah, I support the idea, and thanks for that clarity, Mark. And Pat, no, I don't have great wording by any stretch of the imagination. I just had that concern that, regardless of price, regardless of any component, are we setting ourselves up that this is the way it is for future budgets and for future councils? I still don't feel 100% comfortable. If we were to just add the line subject to budget review or something like that, would that suffice for all, or am I still?
If it will make you happy, I can add that. I think that we do that anyway, would be my only comment.
Appreciate
but
that.
I can add
All right with you, Mark?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
That's something we would do anyway. It's going to be reviewed in every budget, obviously, but that's okay. Makes Scott feel better. Can he sleep at night? We don't want any tossing and turning. So with that amendment, which is the second or third, or I've lost track now. With the original motion and subsequent amendments, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 14.5. We're looking for a motion that council approves the agreement between the corporation of the Township of Hamilton with James and Kylianne Barron and the Bank of Nova Scotia. Oh, there we go. Thank you. And further, that council approves the agreement between the corporation of the Township of Hamilton, James and Kellyanne Barron, and the Bank of Nova Scotia. And further, that council authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign and execute a subdivision agreement for the development of lands within Harwood and any and all required documents to permit the registration of the agreement and associated documents on title to this property. My apologies to Kellyanne. The print was so small I couldn't see it. The clerk helped me out there, so deputy clerk helped me out. Thank you. So we're looking for a motion. Thanks, Larry. Seconded by Scott. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Larry, do you have a question? I'm sorry.
I know it's gone through the county. It's been through the engineers and all that stuff, but I just hope they are really clear with their stormwater runoff and drainage, and that the ditches are well designed and constructed for the future. That's my only comment.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any staff who would like to address that question or at our meeting today. Not sure if Dwayne's here or not.
Yeah.
Mayor Kane.
Yes.
So the subdivision process, we do have a process. The applicant has their own engineer and the township has their municipal engineer. So the plans are presented, the plans are reviewed, the plans are amended, changed until there is consensus that the proposal will work for the development. So we're confident that the plans that have been approved by both the engineers for both parties will be suffice to address the drainage that's required.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Arthur, just one if I can through Mayor Kane.
Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment. I wanted to extend my appreciation to our clerk, Kate Serraris, as well as the staff that she was working with, Lucas, as well as our lawyer and our engineer, and of course the proponents themselves, Jim and Kellyanne, to work through this rather extensive agreement. And we believe it will be very positive component and development in our community. So I wanted to again thank them for their efforts and contributions.
Seconded. All right. So we call the question? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. (14.6). We're down to the applications for section 357 of the Municipal Act for a refund of property taxes. So we're looking for a mover and a seconder. The council receives report T2021-13, applications per section 357 of the Municipal Act for refund of property taxes. That the council approves the write-off of property taxes for the total amount of $54.15 for the 2020 tax year, of which $24.07 is the municipality's portion. Moved by Mark, seconded by Pat. All in favor? That was carried. 14.7. Motion that council receives report T2021-14, an application per section 357 of the Municipal Act for refund of property taxes. And the council approves the write-off of property taxes for the total amount of $114.66 for the 2020 tax year, of which $49.95 is the municipality's portion. Moved by Pat, seconded by Scott. All in favor? And that's carried. 14.8. A motion that council receives report 2021-15, application for section 357 of the Municipal Act for refund of property taxes, and that council approves the write-off of property taxes for the total amount of $262.30 for the 2020 tax year, of which $116.60 is the municipality's portion. Moved by Pat, seconded by Mark. All in favor? That's also carried. 14.9, Fire Safety Grant Program. Looking for a mover and a seconder that council approve the purchase of equipment for $7,200 from the Fire Safety Grant Program to allow the fire department to increase training opportunities and to establish a virtual inspection program. Moved by Larry, seconded by Mark. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. 14.10. We need a motion for council direct staff to bring forward a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement with Donald, Scott, and Cindy Sandercock, and that the agreement be registered on title by the applicants. Moved by Scott, seconded by Larry. Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions? All in favor? That's carried. Emergency services. We need a motion that council receives report PS 2021-03, Fire Department Rapid Response Wildland Vehicle Body for information, and that council approve the purchase of the Fire Department Rapid Response and Body, and the council authorized the fire chiefs through the treasurer to award the purchase of the custom fire body for a 2021 Dodge 5500 4x4 crew cab chassis as quoted in the RFP number Fire 2021-02 to 1200 Degrees Dart Fire for the price of $90,207.75 plus applicable taxes. Thanks, Larry. Seconded, Scott. Any questions for staff? Yes, Mark.
Just a quick question. Dealing with the make of it, I realized there was two that were aluminum and there's one poly. Is there any advantage to the aluminum that would make it more valuable or more that we should maybe be investing in instead of the poly?
We will defer to our fire chief. Kelly was with us earlier. Are you still here, Kelly?
I am, Mayor Kane.
Thank you.
With your permission, I would ask the project lead and Chief Mike Robinson to take this question.
Sure.
Through you, Mayor Kane, and thank you for the question. It is a good one and a debate that we had when the bids come in. So it is a fairly new concept for the fire service to build a body out of poly. However, we have been for several years building the tank components in both our pumpers and our tankers in a poly. So after extensive research, we do understand that other industries use the poly body. A lot of the service companies like the Hydro Ones do use a poly body, and it does come with significant benefits. One of which you'll see that all the componentry that bolts to the body is done with stainless, and it is fabricated in sections. So should you need to do replacement, it welds and replaces easier than the sheet metal and aluminum that we traditionally have. It doesn't have the pitting that you get from the aluminum product. It is lighter, and subsequently we're seeing through this tender, obviously more cost effective. So all of that weighed in from the chief and I, as well as the group. It is our recommendation to move forward with this bid as stated.
Great, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Mike. That was very thorough. Scott, did you also have a question, or was it the same?
Identical question.
Well, we could have Mike give you an identical answer, but if you were listening, we don't need to do that. So
I kind of think I'm okay.
okay, good. Thanks, Scott. Are there any further questions? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? That motion's carried. Thank you. The communications and announcements section. So we have different members of council who asked some of these to be on. who wants to speak to 16.1?
I think that, oh, sorry.
Yes, Pat?
I think that may have been put on because of me, but really all I was suggesting was that that get posted on our website.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure Emily can take care of that. 16.2, Northumberland Central Chamber of Commerce. That was me that stuck that on there because they have a funding request. I don't know what we've done in the past. They said that we've been a regular contributor. Do we wish to continue with that? Is it a budget item that hasn't been considered? I don't know where we stand with it. Maybe staff can help me out.
Just looking at, do you happen to have the letter that you could open for me? Okay. Yes, this is the business awards. And I believe actually we have in the past sponsored, through your Mayor Kane, sponsored the Chamber of Commerce to the approximate amount of $500. We get advertising and credit for our support for them. We have used that amount under economic development component of our budget and allocated $500 again this year for that. I don't think it's for anything further at this point, but obviously we support the efforts of both the businesses in our community and the recognition efforts of the Northumberland Central Chamber of Commerce.
Right, and it's already a budget item, you're saying,
Correct.
so that's
Yes,
great.
it
Let's
is.
move on. Thank you for the info. Oh, sorry, Pat. Did you
I
have a
was just going to say, I move that we continue doing that this year.
Yeah, it's a budget item, so I'm assuming that means that we have committed.
It's done.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
16.3, Health Canada, the cannabis consultations. Again, I stuck this on there, and this is one I'm very concerned about. We've been given an opportunity for input on the way licensing is happening, and man, we've done enough complaining about this that we need to step up and do this. So, but basically, what I'm asking is, how are we? Not if we're going to do this, because we are. How are we going to coordinate the response? How is it going to be generated? Who's stepping up? Am I taking the lead, or is there a staff lead happening? How do we get input from members of council? All the logistics of how we do this, and the date is fast approaching. It's May 7th, so this needs to be something we get onto right away. So I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Let's have. I don't know if council wants to weigh in first or staff wants to weigh in. Let's go council. I guess I see council hands. So let's start with Pat.
It just as an idea, I'm not like tied to it, but just to get the ball rolling, we have the special meeting next week. If staff can bring forward a rough, some of the things that we've talked to, and we can look to see if there's specifics we want to add or delete. Like in terms of how we would like to see this managed. I don't know if that's too short a time frame, but the time frame overall is short. But I think just an open discussion will take forever. And if we have do we agree with this, or if there's something we'd like to add, it would shorten it up. And I think that still gives you enough time to add it to the agenda for the special meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, Pat. I do take into account the fact that we are pushing staff with giving them only a week, but we're being pushed. We only have till May 7th, so it's we're forcing our limitations that have been placed on us, on our staff. I would suggest that members of council who have ideas would forward them. Now, would we send them to clerk, deputy clerk, CAO? Who do we send them to if we have input? Your idea, Scott?
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm going to say send it to our CAO. And in fact, to be quite honest with you, I'd be very surprised if we really need to send Arthur anything. We've discussed this and debated this and talked about this repeatedly. I look to Arthur and say, can you coordinate this for us? And yes, if we have any individual ideas, we can send them to you. But if Arthur doesn't know where I stand, I'd be very, very surprised, as an example.
we've certainly kicked it around. We've punched holes in all the things. We know all the things that are wrong with the way the federal government's doing this. So I don't know what your schedule's like, Arthur, or if you're going to delegate it to somebody else or what you want to do, but
Apparently just opened up a little.
well, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
It gotten a little-
Definitely, council's been very clear and consistent on its interest in this issue. So we'll try our best to pull together what material's been there. It won't be me solely. Obviously, I rely on a number of staff who've been involved in this. We've got an interim control bylaw in place. We have staff who have done inspections, whether it's from a building code perspective or fire code. And again, we have staff that are knowledgeable about what's going on in the community as well. So obviously it'll be, many of us will be involved, and we do look forward to any council input that could assist in that as well. But certainly you've been consistent, and we'll try and draw upon the material we know today.
We in particular need to punch holes in the way the federal government issues its licenses. That is the actual crux of the problem. They are so out of touch with reality. It's just stunning. So
Issues
If
and
they went by
forces.
their own rules, it would be nice.
okay, so well, let's, without beating it around any longer, because this meeting is very long. So we'll look to your leadership, Arthur, for next Tuesday. We'll have it part of the special council meeting.
Good.
Hopefully
That sounds
it shouldn't take too long. Thank you.
Good.
If we can go back to our communications list. Thanks, Emily. The city of Kitchener and the township of Georgian Bay. The Planning Act timeline. Geez, this is me again. I did give Sandra a heads up that I was going to be asking her to give us some input on this. Those of you who read it will see they've changed the amount of time that's allowed to get certain things done. And I was concerned that we could still accomplish it within that time frame. So I was hoping Sandra could, just give us some input of how she thinks it might affect, her job and whether or not we should support this. I mean, this resolution is, I think, against the new timelines. They want to revert it to the old timelines. So I was just hoping to get some input from Sandra.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I took a few minutes and looked into the timelines that have been in place for a number of years that were then changed in 2017 and changed again in 2021. An official plan amendment for my lifetime as a planner had a 180-day review period before council had to make a decision. In 2017, that was increased to 210 days, 7 months. In 2021, it's been decreased to 120 days, 4 months. Similarly, a zoning bylaw amendment went from 120 days up to 150 and now down to 90. And a subdivision, 180 days, stayed at 180 days and decreased to 120. The decrease does concern me quite a bit. I know what my workload is like, and I'm stressed beyond. I did speak with Dwayne Campbell, the planner for the County of Northumberland, and a number of these resolutions have gone around and around, and they even went forward before the 2021 changes. Obviously, nothing came of these resolutions. The province apparently did not really listen to the municipalities at this point. In Northumberland County, it doesn't appear to be a problem because we are all working as quickly as humanly possible. And there are other municipalities like this where planning is a one-person department. What's it going to do? Well, if somebody decides to appeal the lack of action of a zoning bylaw amendment at day 91, they are literally shooting themselves in the foot, because once they appeal, I drop it. It is no longer an open file on my desk. It is an open file before the tribunal. And I'm not going to process it any further, official plan amendment or subdivision. I think most people are reasonable in that I can't do 120 days, but you know what? Council's next week, so it's going to be 127. yeah, okay, they're going to go with that. If I start stretching it to 150, 180 days, adding a month, they might get a little anxious, and I'm sure various people would be receiving phone calls before they appeal. I would prefer, my own personal opinion is that these time limits be consistent with each other, rather than someone like myself having to remember a number of different timeframes. But that's a very personal opinion there. If there's any other questions, I'll be happy to try to answer, but that's where I was seeing this going.
Arthur?
So just thank you, Sandra, for your comments. Can I also make a remark that Dwayne Campbell is also sitting in on our meeting? I just was going to ask if council would be interested in hearing any remarks he may have on this as well.
I always like to hear from Dwayne.
And I always like to be able to come in front of the Honorable Hamilton Township Council and give my remarks. So I appreciate that. Good afternoon. Thank you. Sandra and I did have a discussion quickly about this yesterday, and I echo what Sandra has said and emphasize, even though the timelines have changed and have been in effect for a few months now, we haven't seen a surge of appeals come in at the county level or at the local municipal level for that matter. Like Sandra said, there's a understanding amongst the residents and business owners and developers, I think, in Northumberland County, that know that we're not sitting on applications. We're not a very large urban or regional center that has applications that can't be processed because there's more than we can handle. We are obviously dealing with them as quickly as possible, and I think we'll continue to do that. And you will be the first to know, I'm sure, being the elected officials, if something isn't getting done fast enough. And it would be in someone's interest to take that route as opposed to going to the tribunal, which would end up taking much longer. Sandra was definitely correct in that. So I think it's a valiant effort by some of the municipalities, like the correspondence you've had, but I don't see anything changing at the provincial level, not as the result of this letter or the others that came before it. So I'll leave it there, and you can make your decision as you will.
So to be blunt, then the reason I had this put on was for input from planners to tell us, would it be an advantage for us to support this resolution? And I wanted to hear from you is that we'd be batting our head against the wall.
Like I said, I haven't seen any surge, or if there was maybe some surplus of appeals, I would suggest that would be reason for it. But at this stage of the game, I'm not seeing it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So I won't recommend. I was going to make a recommendation, perhaps, that we support this resolution, but based on the information, I won't. So if we want to move on, unless somebody else wants to do that, fine. Then we can move on in our communications, please. Oh.
Still you, Bill.
Yeah, this is me again. I hope so. I hope some of the rest of you guys put something on. Yeah, this is about the closure of the fire college in Gravenhurst, and again, it's very obvious that the town of Gravenhurst doesn't want it closed for all the economic reasons. All the people that are employed there, and all the businesses that are frequented by the people going to the college. But again, I know Kelly's with us or Mike, and I just wanted a little input from them as to whether there was any sense in supporting this resolution from the town of Gravenhurst, or again, whether we're just, beating a dead horse, whether there's no advantage. So I don't know if Kelly or Mike has a couple of minutes just to give some input.
Thank you, Mayor Kane. This is Fire Chief Kelly Surson speaking. And although I've had a number of positive, very positive experiences and virtually cut my teeth at the Ontario Fire College, and it saddens me that the Fire College is closing, times have changed. The Fire College has been closing for the last 20 years, and in my opinion, has been closed for the last 10 years. The curriculum has changed. The way that we train has changed. Course offerings have disappeared, and it has become very difficult to get into the Fire College, particularly with paid on-call or volunteer firefighters. As you are aware, at least for the last 7 years, we have been working very hard to redefine our training programs and how we train firefighters vis-a-vis the county recruit class, the county officer program. And when I served time with the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs Board of Directors, the Humber College Executive Development Certification Program for fire chiefs. It's obviously a personal item for a number of people, including myself, but I think in doing business, that is the way that we have to move forward. We are now, or have now moved to the National Fire Protection Association, which is an international standard that we're working to, and it allows us a much broader means of training. The Ontario government is recommending and supporting regionalized training programs, which we have a number of in our local area and jurisdiction and use often. And we will continue to strengthen our training programs. There obviously will be a financial impact. I am not quite sure what that looks like, but as you heard today from MPP Piccini, we have received some funding to help us subsidize some of the items that we're speaking to with respect to training and moving forward with technology. I'm hoping that we get some further support in finances, and I am understanding why we had to go down this road.
So thanks, Kelly. So again, I'm hearing that it's not really going to be any advantage for us to try to support the resolution from the town of Gravenhurst. So thanks for the input. Can move back to our communications list. So I think we're at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Just want to clarify that we are taking some action on this letter. Like I said, go to Nuzwit or
Mayor Kane, we're at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I got 3:57 on my computer.
We're gonna have to extend our meeting.
Yeah, we are. So I've got 3:58 now. Didn't know if we're going to be able to get to the bottom of this list or not. If not, do we want to extend the meeting and then take a short break before we go into close? So we'll just extend the meeting now, continue our open meeting, and then take a short break, and then go in, then make a motion for closed.
I would make the motion to extend the meeting, but I'm really time sensitive today, so I have to be gone by 4:15. So yeah, if you take a break, that's fine, but I won't be coming back. If so.
Okay. So we have a motion to extend the meeting. Do we have a seconder? That's Pat. So from the members of council, all in favor of extending the meeting? And that's carried. Are you with us, Scott? Yes? Yep. Okay. So that's carried. So the clerks can note that at 3:59, we extend the meeting. I guess it's 30 minutes, is it?
Yep.
Yes, half hour.
Okay. All right. So we're back to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. We received a letter regarding funding. I just want to have an update that we're making some sort of action on this.
To you, Mr. Mayor, we did submit all the required documents needed for this fund.
Great. Way to go, Nazir. I knew we could count on you. Any other questions from members of council? Perfect. 16.7. The town of
That was me.
Thank goodness. Okay.
This will be very quick. I'm asking that the municipality support this resolution. Yes, they're closing 26 centers. Mostly that's for increased operational savings, and they're doing things like closing Millbrook, Peterborough, Oshawa, and having just one. Cochrane is a far northern community. You're going to have a lot of Indigenous youth at that center, and you're going to be looking at long distances of travel for them to be placed somewhere different. I really think that this one should remain open.
And that would also preclude visits from family members and so on.
Yeah.
I hear you talking. So I'm in agreement. Other members of council wish to support this resolution.
So
thanks, Larry. So I guess we need a motion, Pat, to support the resolution by the town of Cochrane.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
And I think Larry seconded it. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The Township of Pickle Lake.
Okay, this is me too. I read this and thought, I have thought this for a very long time. That is, you can be all sorts of things and still get on municipal councils, and it doesn't make sense to me. So I would like to see us to support this, if for no other reason than people start looking at what the criteria is a little bit more. So I'll make a motion to support.
Mark seconded it. Any further discussion? All in favor of supporting the resolution from town of Pickle Lake? That's carried. Thank you. Town of Callaghan. Sorry, Caledon.
Still me.
Oh,
Oh, did you put it on too, Larry? We can't hear you, Larry.
Sorry, you go ahead, Pat.
Again, I'm not sure how they would end up making this work in terms of the different suicide hotlines that are out now. But an overall system to me makes much more sense, and especially in the times that we live in, I'd like to know that we're working towards getting a number that everybody recognizes right away. So I make a motion to support.
thanks, Larry, for seconding. Any discussion on this one? All in favor? That's also carried. So that ends our communications, our bylaws. Section 17. We're at bylaw 2021-16, the tax rate bylaw.
Mayor Kane,
Yes,
before you proceed to 17, can I ask that a motion be passed to receive all the communication
Okay.
as listed?
yes, sorry. Mover by Larry, seconded by Mark. All in favor for receiving information? And that's carried.
Thank you.
Sorry, Kate. So we're looking for a mover and a seconder that bylaw 2021-16 being a bylaw to adopt estimates and all sums required during the year to strike the rates of taxation for the year 2020 and to provide for penalty and interest in default of payment for the year 2021 and to authorize its execution, to give a first, second, and third reading and finally pass the 20th day of April 2021. Thanks, Pat. Seconded by Larry again. All in favor? And that's carried. Bylaw 2021-17. So it's recommended the township that the council, the corporation of the Hamilton and Access Falls, that bylaw 2021 sorry about that, people. I just got a low battery sign and I got kicked out of here. So I'm back, I think. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Geez, the whole screen just went black. I've never had that happen before. So I need the agenda back. I've lost the screen share, Emily. Sorry, that's my fault. Okay. So we're at 2021-17, I believe. Bylaw 2021-17 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and treasurer to sign and execute a construction contract agreement. Is that where we are? Or did I skip? Have I
Nope,
jumped?
that's right. That's right.
Okay, that's right. Okay, sorry, I lost I'm all discombobulated. My screen went black and I haven't recovered yet. My mind went black with it. So between the corporation, the township of Hamilton, jointly with the township of Alnwick, Haldeman, and Miller Paving Limited, for surface treatment of various roads identified in the 2021 Township of Hamilton Municipal Roads Resurfacing Program as outlined in tender number PW 2021-03, be given first, second, and third reading and finally passed this 20th day of April 2021. Moved by Pat, seconded by Larry. Any discussion? Call a question. All in favor? That's carried. 17.3, that a bylaw 2021-18, being a bylaw to authorize the fire chief and treasurer to sign and execute a purchase agreement between the corporation of the Township of Hamilton and 1200 Degrees Dart Fire for the purchase of a custom fire body for a 2021 Dodge 5500 4x4 crew cab chassis as quoted in RFP number Fire 2021-02 to the price of $90,207.75 plus HST, be given first, second, and third reading and finally passed this 20th day of April 2021. Moved by Larry, seconded by Scott. All in favor? And that's carried. 17.4. This is the bylaw 2021-19, being a bylaw to appoint municipal bylaw enforcement officers. Be given first, second, and third reading and finally passed this 20th day of April 2021. Thanks, Mark. Seconded by Larry. All in favor? That's carried. 17.5. Being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a merger agreement with Sandra Cox. I'm sorry. Be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed this 20th day of April 2021. Is that where we're at? Okay, thanks, Scott. Seconded, Larry, all in favor? That's carried. 17.6, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and treasurer to sign and execute a purchase agreement with the Parks and Recs master plan. Be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed this 20th day of April 2021. Thanks, Mark. Seconded by Larry. All in favor? Thank you. I've lost you from my screen, Pat.
Still here.
Good.
I'll yell out if I disagree.
I didn't know if you had a hand up. That's all I'm saying for seconding. I can't see you right now. Oh, so a notice of motions, we have none. Does anyone know if we have any media on the line?
I don't believe there's anyone
I
registered.
didn't see any earlier when I looked at the participation list. Could. So we're all the way up to closed session. It is, what are we talking about? 4:08 or something. So Mark has to leave. You say at 4:15, Mark?
Yeah, 4:20 at the latest. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
That's what happens, but you are going to miss most of this anyway. So I'll leave it to other members of council. You want to dive in here right as quickly as we can and let Mark ask any questions that you might have before he has to leave.
I think that's only fair, Bill, to Mark.
Okay, yeah, I do too. Okay, so let's move right into it then. Hopefully we're all okay to continue. So we need a motion to go into closed session on Municipal Act, Section 239, Part 2, subsection C. A proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board.
Yes, I'm done.
Made a motion then. Thank you, Mark. The council moved to closed session permitted under the Municipal Act, Section 239.2, subsection C at 4:08. Discuss a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality. All in favor? Gets carried. So we are in closed session.
Okay.
Emily, you've got some
We
adjustments
have
to do?
to actually first, I think, stop the recording, right?
Yeah,